Good morning and welcome to the Market Discovery Workshop on Ireland. We're going to get started. I know there's other attendees due to join, and they can join as we make our way through the workshop. The Market Discovery Workshop in Ireland over the next 3 hours, we hope you will gain a thorough understanding of the Irish startup ecosystem, the market opportunities that exist for startups. For those of you not aware of the Seeds of Bravery is a 20 million euro project funded by the European Union under the European Innovation Council to support Ukrainian tech startups, bringing them closer to the EU. Our mission is to foster diversity, promote deep tech industry, and stimulate hundreds of Ukrainian-based innovations benefiting end users in Europe, Ukraine, and beyond, connecting corporates and governments to the benefit of SMEs and individual customers. The consortium of Seeds of Bravery is a pan-European consortium composed of renowned tech funding and business companies. There are 17 partners and 2 associated partners, one of whom, our pro bono legal partner, DLA Piper, will be joining us today. Seeds of Bravery will allocate 20 million in non-refundable grants in 5 different programs. Business Innovation Services offering grants of up to 10,000, focusing on business models, plans, and growth strategies. Innovative Entrepreneurship with grants of up to 25,000 euro. Deep Tech Incubators. And Rebuilding Ukraine, aiming to rapidly reconstruct post-war Ukraine with grants of up to 25,000 for innovative products and services. And finally, Deep Tech Scale-Up Accelerators, offering 50,000 to scale prototypes successfully piloted and expanded to reach for companies with TRL 7 or higher. But that's not all. In addition to the funding, there are numerous beneficiaries will also gain access to a wide range of activities, including matchmaking with EU and global tech communities, investor and accelerator networks, market fast-track programs, market discovery workshops like today for numerous other geographies, and specialized coaching for female entrepreneurs. AxisBIC is one of the 17 partners involved in Seeds of Bravery. AxisBIC is located in the southwest of Ireland. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce my colleagues, Larry O'Donoghue, who's CEO of AxisBIC, and Declan Fox, Senior Consultant with AxisBIC, who will be assisting with today's workshop and chairing sessions. AxisBIC identifies innovative entrepreneurs and businesses, and over the past 35 years has worked with over 1,000 startups. We are empowering high-growth entrepreneurs in Clare, Cork, Kerry, and Limerick in the southwest of Ireland. And we collaborate to prepare founders for investment and growth. 85% of the startups engaging in this process survive after the first 5 years. AxisBIC partners with a network, is a part of a network of 170 plus EU BICs, the European Business and Innovation Centre Network. AxisBIC also works closely with numerous partners in Ireland and overseas, particularly in Ireland with Enterprise Ireland, government agencies, local government authorities, technology clusters, and partners. AxisBIC is also a member and plays an active role in EBAN, the European Business Angel Network. AxisBIC ran and managed the EBAN Congress in 2022. The Seeds of Bravery, we will now get into the agenda for the Seeds of Bravery workshop today. In section 1, we will look at the country overview. That will be a country overview and then a look at the startup ecosystem. 2 presentations. In section 2, we will have a panel discussion around the market opportunity and industry sectors. In section 3, we are going to look at the local government support and regulatory and commercial environment. 2 presentations here. At 11 o'clock, we will also have a Q&A session just before we go for a break at 11 o'clock. In section 4, the investment landscape, we will have a short overview of the investment landscape in Ireland, followed by a panel discussion around the sources of funding. And finally, we will have a presentation and a panel discussion looking at universities and research facilities. Just some things to note. This webinar is being recorded and may be used for promotional purposes. Please submit any questions you have during the webinar into the Q&A, and we will try to get to these questions during the webinar, but if we don't, we will respond to you individually. So I think we'd like to move now to our first presenter, who is Patrick Doyle from the Irish Development Agency. Patrick is the Southwest Regional Manager in Ireland. And Patrick, I'm delighted to welcome you to attend and present. I'm going to stop sharing my slides so you can share yours.
Perfect. Thanks, Vanilla, and thanks for the opportunity. I'll just, hopefully this will work here. Okay, can people see that?
Yeah, and if you want to go to the first slide, we're just on your fourth slide. Yeah.
All right, gotcha. Okay, well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity.
You want to go to presentation mode, Patrick, so that it just makes it bigger?
Okay, gotcha. Are we in presentation mode there on your side?
No, but that's okay. That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Let's see there now. Is it there? No?
Yeah, that's perfect. So you're on your second slide. Perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks,
well, look, first of all, look, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm the regional manager here in the southwest of Ireland, covering the Kerry and Cork area. What I'll do today is just give you a sense of what IDA is and what we do. I'll also just talk about, I guess, the contribution, particularly for foreign direct investment, what that makes to Ireland, talk about how we market Ireland internationally, and talk about maybe some of the enterprise base that we have here. And lastly, I'll talk around our own strategy, where we see the opportunities and how we're trying to harness those. So I guess, first of all, IDA is a state agency. Our sole focus is around attracting foreign direct investment into Ireland. So that's working with and marketing Ireland to international companies across all sectors. So as you can see from this slide, there's obviously foreign direct investment has a huge impact in Ireland, right? So this, as of 2023, there's about 35.8 billion expenditure on the back of IDA client companies, right? We've about 1,800, just over 1,800 client companies. They employ just over 300,000 people. So that obviously has a huge impact across the country. Of our 1,800 clients, in excess of 50% of those are actually outside the Dublin area, and that's a big area of focus for us as well. So, you know, from an Irish perspective, about 2/3 of all corporation tax paid to the Irish Exchequer comes from IDA client companies. So in other words, foreign direct investment is very key to the Irish economy. I guess, how do we market Ireland internationally? Look, Ireland obviously is a small but open economy. You know, IDA is working in this space for in excess of 70 years, right? So look, we use what we call the STEP model as part of our value proposition for the country. So we can see here, you know, the S from a stable environment, sustainable location, so a stable economic and political environment. And that, you know, particularly in the last number of years, has become far more important for the clients and the people that we're actually trying to attract. Probably in excess of 80% of our clients come from the US. So the US is our single biggest market, but we do have clients from, obviously, a substantial amount of clients from Europe, Asia Pac, as well as we have offices in other parts of the world as well. I suppose the big thing that we have is a track record, and that's really revolves around our talent and education. So, you know, the Irish education system is top class. You know, we have a probably highly educated youngest population in Europe. And that makes a huge difference when we are looking and clients are looking to come to Ireland. The E for ease of doing business is very important. The fact that we have EU membership is a key differentiator for ourselves. I suppose post-Brexit, Ireland is actually the only English-speaking country now left in the EU, which again is a good marketing tool from our perspective. But that ease of doing business is vitally important. You know, there's a pro-business environment here, and that stems all the way from government policy over a long period of time, and that brings its own level of certainty as well. And that's very important for companies who are looking to establish here. And obviously partnership solutions, and I'll talk about that a bit more as we go on. But, you know, we see Ireland as a real country of innovation. And again, that all revolves back to the people and how the people are educated, and the track record that a lot of the talent that exists in Ireland is used to working in multinational environments. A lot have worked overseas as well with certain companies, and bring back that expertise back to the country. And that's really, really important. There are also a lot of innovation happening in Ireland, and I'm sure my colleague from Enterprise Ireland will speak more about that. But clustering and the effects of clustering can, be richly seen in Ireland, and that adds to the level of innovation, and that stands apart as well within the network. So I suppose, how do we work with clients? And we talk about partnership, and that really is what it is from an IDA perspective, right? And that maybe is our differentiator. We have offices all over the world. We have a number of offices in the US. So we have colleagues who are on the ground, who are visiting corporate, building connections, networking consistently, and that's what builds our pipeline. So how we support then is obviously key thing for us, is trying to attract people to companies to come and visit Ireland, visit particular regions, get a feel for the ecosystem, and that's our strongest support. We also get great support from our existing client base, who also see the value in having other companies come here and adding to that ecosystem and adding to the vibe of the place. So I suppose then we look at how we engage and shortlist, is looking through those introductions, passing on and sharing of information. We have a fast landing service here. We can assist companies around employment permits, particularly if they want people to come here to work from overseas, or to set operations up here. We can assist in that space. We assist around property solutions, whether they be private solutions or solutions that IDA may have themselves. And again, we try to integrate them into the network. So organizations like AxisBIC, Chambers of Commerce, other cluster organizations, that ecosystem piece is crucial for us to be able to do our jobs. And then obviously there are different funding programs and incentives that are available as well to help companies both establish. But as I said, part of our partnership model is to consistently work with companies and bring them up the value chain as well, which is a big focus for us. And obviously the aftercare piece is crucial. We're there in the good and the bad. So if there's challenges, etc., that are happening, IDA is there, and we're there to try and support our clients at all times. And then, it might be things around media support, around announcing investment or new investments that are happening. So I suppose going back to our track record over a long period of time, right? So in Ireland, we were very lucky. We were very established enterprise base at this stage across a whole lot of sectors. So, obviously life sciences is a huge cluster in Ireland. Ireland traditionally would have been a low-cost manufacturing country. That's no longer the case, but where we are now is really moving up the value chain. So that high-end manufacturing and different types of innovation and R&D is now the area of focus. Technology is huge in Ireland. And there's many different strands within that, right? So cyber, here where we are in Cork, is a very established cyber cluster. Consumer tech is obviously very, very big in Ireland as well. And if you take the likes of IBM, who are, a long-standing tech client, who are probably here since the 50s, and to prove the kind of partnership model, I guess, they announced another 800 jobs for Ireland last week, right? And again, looking in the space of around R&D is a big focus of that new investment, right? So it just goes to show how that partnership piece works, and has worked over, 60, 70 years with that particular company. So I suppose then I just wanted to talk about, I guess, the strategy. Now, our current strategy is actually coming to an end this year. So we're in a big area of work at the moment around new strategy formation. But these are the 5 pillars of our current strategy. And I guess the new pillars are probably not going to be hugely different from this, I would suggest, but probably doubling down in certain areas. So obviously growth, at the end of the day, we're a jobs agency. We want to try and foster as much growth and employment growth as possible. And we see further opportunities in that space. We've experienced exponential growth over the last 10 years. But there are new areas and new ways of harnessing that. And I suppose part of that is down to how our clients transform. And that transformation is, upskilling of the existing workforce. Obviously, AI is an opportunity. We see it as an opportunity now, where, there's opportunity for companies to be more efficient, to add greater efficiencies, but it also allows the upskilling of existing employees to new roles, new skills. And that's something that as an agency, we're working closely with clients to try and support that activity. Regions is a key pillar. So balanced regional development is something government is very serious about, and us as an agency by extension are same. So, there is a target to have in excess of 50% of all investments outside of the Dublin region. And we've delivered that over the last number of years, and that will continue to be a big focus. And obviously sustainability and decarbonisation is absolutely key, and that's vital for all of our clients at the moment. There's a financial imperative around reporting, etc., for that, but that's an area that there's a lot of incentives and grant aids around that, and Ireland is trying to take a lead in this area. So I guess a lot of our clients are part of a global network within their own companies. So it can be a point of difference for them, if they can decarbonize their operations here and step out from the crowd as well globally. And there's many, many examples of that. And we'll probably get to that in the panel discussion around some of the activity that's happening in that space. And then the last thing is obviously the impact piece, which is, the impact in the Irish economy. So for every 10 jobs that are created by an IDA client company, there's typically about 8 jobs estimated created in the domestic economy. And that adds to the overall economic impact that goes back to the exchequer and back to the state. So, we see that Irish companies and foreign direct investment companies can work as closely together as possible. There's a huge amount of supply chain opportunities there, and that's something that's been fostered as well over a large number of years. And we'll continue to do so. So we look forward to trying to bring those opportunities together. So there's huge opportunity. I didn't want to go into too much detail on the slides. So hopefully that gives just a very quick snapshot of what's going on.
Fantastic, Patrick. Thank you so much for that presentation. That was a really good snapshot of and whistle-stop tour of the Irish ecosystem. Now I'll invite Anna-Marie Turley, who's Manager in the Entrepreneurship and HPSU Operations with Enterprise Ireland. Anna-Marie, we're delighted to have you participate. If you'd like to share your screen. Oh, that looks fantastic.
Thank you, Fionnuala.
That's beautiful.
Great.
Thanks, Fionnuala. Thank you very much.
So again, thanks very much for the opportunity to be here this morning. And just as Fionnuala said, my name is Anna-Marie Turley. I head up the Entrepreneurship and High Potential Startup Operations team with Enterprise Ireland. So this morning, I would like to take the opportunity to give you, if I can get my slides working, to give you a brief overview on Enterprise Ireland, who we are, what we do, some of the supports that are available to startups and to businesses, and give you a brief explanation of how we fit into the overall ecosystem in Ireland. So just to kick off with then, who are Enterprise Ireland? What do we do? So we are the Irish Government's Trade and Innovation Agency. We work in partnership with Irish enterprises to help them start, grow, innovate, and win export sales on global markets. And in this way, it's sustaining economic growth, regional development, and employment. So through Enterprise Ireland, the government provides support to expand research capacity in companies, to increase collaboration between enterprise and the research sector, and to maximise commercialisations of the state research and investment. And you'll hear a bit more from that later on from my colleague Christian Stafford, who will talk through that. So our mission is, as you can see, it's to accelerate the development of world-class Irish companies to achieve leading positions in global markets. And our vision is very much around helping those companies create solutions for global challenges and to deliver sustainable prosperity for Ireland. So in other words, we're looking to see Irish companies create solutions, not just for Ireland, but on the global scale, and thus increasing our jobs in Ireland and creating benefit here. So a little bit about us then. We have 50 offices, 40 of which are overseas. We have about 850 people. On our books at the moment, we have approximately 4,000 plus clients, and of which we make direct investments or direct funding into those. So there's about 3,700 plus of which we've made direct investments in. Patrick referred to earlier about the importance of regional projects and the Irish government's focus on that. We are very much focused on helping those jobs go outside of Dublin, create the balanced economy. And we also provide supports into technology centres and gateways. And again, my colleague Christian will probably refer to those later on. So what do we help startups with? So looking at it, we can help with a number of issues. Primarily, the first thing that not a lot of people would associate us with is funding. So I'll explain some of that in a few minutes and go into some detail about some of the funding schemes that are potentially available to startups and companies. Market intelligence is really the ground zero of where our companies receive support from us. And primarily that would be through our market research centre. We have supports available from our reports like Frost and Sullivan, from Gartner, and entrepreneurs would use these in terms of doing some basic research when they're exploring sectors, when they're exploring countries that they want to break into, getting some knowledge. And these reports are typically very expensive, so we can help you gain access to those. Again, once you're an Enterprise Ireland client, you're assigned a development advisor to work with you. They're essentially like your relationship manager within Enterprise Ireland. They'll work with you on guiding you through the supports that are potentially available, introducing you to our colleagues overseas, as I mentioned earlier, and providing that challenge on your business and helping you along the way. Equally, we have our mentor program that kicks in at various different stages with various different funding supports, but it is an invaluable resource for that sounding board to help you with issues that you may need some advice on. They're not consultants, they're generally people who are given back into the ecosystem. They've generally started businesses themselves, and they're very much there in terms of sounding out that idea, challenge you into, again, as to what things could go wrong, and maybe offering some different potentials. And often they have a wide network as well of individuals that they can introduce you to. Skills development, and again, Patrick would have referred to our very important educational system in Ireland, but again, the skills development, it keeps on growing. And as you progress through your business growth and your business journey, you will need different skills available to you and the team on board. And this is something that we provide with Enterprise Ireland in terms of working with the community as to who is best fitted to provide those development skills for you. Knowledge and partnership, we don't do this all on our own. We work very closely with the ecosystem throughout Ireland and overseas, and it is all about getting that strategic partnership working together, whether that be seminars, whether that be networking events, partnering with individuals to see how we can provide it with the best service for you. So in order to become an eligibility client, Patrick referred to the foreign direct investment part from the IDA. We're the other way around. So we're sister agencies, but we are very much focused on businesses being set up, controlled, managed in Ireland. And the legislation under which we operate is that companies must be an internationally traded service or manufacturing operation. In order for us to make investments in companies, they must be registered as a limited liability company. And as I said, majority of the team based in Ireland. The company must have an export focus. We are very much keen on getting sales overseas. That's for how our domestic economy grows. And in order to become what's called a high potential startup, and I'll refer to that later on, and indeed, if you're coming in at a later stage, you must be able to show the path and the ambition to how you are going to employ at least 10 people and achieve $1 million in sales within 3 years. So I mentioned as well that we work in partnership as part of the ecosystem. We're a key part of it, but some of our partners here, the Business Innovation Centres, there's 4 of which AxisBIC are obviously hosting this webinar today. Apologies for not updating the logo there. We work with our colleagues across the local enterprise offices, 31 of them. I think you'll hear from some of them later on. And we work very closely with the accelerator program. So again, it's all, what is the right part, or what is the right bit that you can plug into as an entrepreneur at the right point in time. And we're all working together. It's a key part of making that. Again, some of the other areas that we work into in terms of Enterprise Ireland, we would provide core funding for what's called the Halo Business Angel Network. So the HBAN is a group of angel investors. They are looking for companies to invest in. Companies are obviously looking for investors. This is like a matchmaking service. We would provide funding with our colleagues in Northern Ireland, Intertrade and Invest NI, to make that operation work properly. And again, part of the ecosystem as well that we're involved in, we're actually the funder of funds. So through the Seed and Venture Capital Scheme, the Irish government have made 175 million available since 2019 to this year, 2024. We invest that in venture capital companies in order for them to leverage other funding so as they can invest in innovative Irish companies. And again, you'll hear from Amy Neal a little bit later on about what way that works. So we invest as a limited partner in those funds. So now I'll talk a little bit about the funds that are and the supports that are available from Enterprise Ireland. So very often an entrepreneur's journey begins with the New Frontiers program. So New Frontiers is the National Entrepreneurship Development Program. It's not an academic program, but it is run or delivered by our technological universities. It's carried out in 18 locations throughout Ireland, so it's got a good regional balance on that. And the whole idea behind this is that it is designed to help you figure out whether or not you actually have a business that can be viable. So there'll be a group of participants on it. You make the connections, everybody's in the same phase as to where they're at. The idea is that you gain confidence as to whether or not this is really a business. And there's a fund associated with that as well. So basically you'll be provided a mentor to work with you in terms of challenging that out. The program itself is divided into 3 phases. The first is part-time, delivered weekends, in the evenings. It's generally online as well. Again, testing the idea. If you deem at the end of that period of time that you actually have something that you can work with, you'll be invited to participate on a full-time program 6 months. Now, actually, some of the feedback that we have got is people would like this to be part-time as well. We piloted our first ever part-time program last weekend, so hopefully that will continue to grow and develop. Again, the commitment here is 6 months working on developing out that business plan. And then again, if at the end of that seems to be as though that can be a runner, you could be invited to the phase 3 of that, which is again 3 months full-time. And again, fleshing out the business plan, trying to find out whether people will actually buy it, what your target market looks like, what the price point is, how you develop it. Innovation vouchers are frequently mentioned. And again, this can be availed of during the New Frontiers if you're availing of that, or if you're an EI client. Essentially, it's a voucher that can be cashed in with a college and to do some work. So some of the work that's typically done on that could be some new product, new process development. It could be some looking at what you already have if you're an existing business, to do an audit to see, right, okay, how can we move forward? What's best practice? But again, it is a voucher that is cashed in with the college to design to get you that little bit forward. When you are an Enterprise Ireland client, one of the first options in terms of funding can be a feasibility study. That is what it says in the tin. It is designed to figure out if you have got a viable business. What is the business plan? A little bit like it could be a further extension of New Frontiers, or if you've come through a business before and you're getting that little bit forward, it's designed to help you figure out what the next stages are. And again, as I said, researching what your business plan looks like, how much money you're going to need to raise to actually get your business off the ground. The Funding that we have introduced recently, we introduced it towards the end of 2022. This is a convertible loan note. It's our pre-seed fund. And again, really early stage funding here. It's in the form of either 50 or 100,000 euro in a convertible loan note. And it is designed really to help the entrepreneur focus on a series of commercial milestones, technical milestones, to get them to the next stage of funding, which is seed funding. And again, you can come back to us for further funding. This is very early stage. So again, a bit like the criteria that I mentioned earlier in order to be an Enterprise Ireland client, the few additions here is you can't have raised more than 150,000 in funding or the same in sales. And again, remember, this is pre-seed. That's why those criteria are in there. Like the other supports, once you get the pre-seed start fund, you work with a development advisor. You can avail of a mentor for up to 10 sessions with that, access to our market research centre, etc. Again, the bigger round of funding here, this is our seed offering. This is the Innovative High Potential Startups. And this is around when you have raised external funding and you're coming to us in order to get that growth, get the business really off the ground. Typically of the order of 250,000. But again, what I would say here is it's very much around the scale and ambition of the company, the level of risk that's involved, and what the actual business requirements are. So that is kind of the look at our due diligence in terms of how we assess that. Post that, we are with companies for their life stage. We're not just with them for the start. We work them with companies through their entire journey. So we do follow-on investments. And again, that's looking at where the company wants to go, hopefully expand and take off into a new market. And again, we are there for the lifetime journey of the company. Post our equity investments, we typically are involved by way of grant. Sustainability, Patrick mentioned this earlier. Again, key focus for all our companies in terms of raising that awareness level of how important sustainability is on the agenda, what's coming down the tracks, how it needs to be part of the overall business plan the companies need to address. And we have some financial supports available to that. So that's me. Thanks very much, Fionnuala.
Fantastic, Anna-Marie. Thank you so much for that whistle-stop tour of Enterprise Ireland and all of the supports that you provide to startups. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Larry O'Donoghue, who's going to chair the next session.
Thanks, William, Fionnuala, and thanks, Patrick and Anna-Marie as well for those presentations at the start. And Patrick is going to join us on this panel as well. Just to dig a little bit deeper into the Irish economy, and in particular the sectors that are really kind of dominant here at the moment, and where we're seeing a lot of the activity, both in terms of foreign direct investment, but also in terms of indigenous growth. And we're going to just look at those sectors and see what's happening recently, and maybe chat about where we see the opportunities in the future. And I think that'll be interesting for the attendees on this webinar this morning to understand how they could, if the focus that Ireland has around those sectors is something that is potentially attractive for them as companies or as new markets. And so we'll just explore that a little bit more. So I think in terms of the sectors, we've focused on cybersecurity. There's a very interesting cluster of cybersecurity companies developed in Ireland over the last number of years. And we've Willie Dalton, who's the Vice President and Managing Director of VIC1, which is a Trend Micro company, a subsidiary of Trend Micro. So Willie's joined the panel this morning. We also have Dr. Sinead Walsh from BioInnovate. I think BioInnovate is an incredibly interesting innovation hub, which is bringing in the next generation of healthcare visionaries and entrepreneurs into the ecosystem in Ireland, and doing some very interesting work there, and has outstanding results in terms of generating research and new companies, and indeed growing and scaling those companies internationally as well. And we have Irene Ward from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. So Irene is the Research and Development and Demonstration Manager with SEI, and SEI are instrumental in the implementation of government policy around all things related to energy and sustainability in Ireland. So you're very welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here this morning and for helping out with what I think is an incredibly purposeful project to support Ukraine during this war, and to directly support startup companies that have been are still in Ukraine but have been dispersed across all of Europe, and many of whom are actually based out of Ireland. And good morning to everybody that's joining from Ireland this morning. So, John, we might start off with yourself, if you wouldn't mind. So maybe just give a little bit of an introduction to yourself and to Tech Ireland and the work that you guys do there.
Thanks, Larry. Hope you can hear me there. We're delighted to be here. Yeah, Tech Ireland, Tech Ireland has the most complete database of information on the Irish tech community. It's information that's public and freely available. Information on about 4,500 Irish tech companies, startups and scale-ups, another 10,000 other businesses here, investors, business angels, support agencies, startup hubs, and what have you, multinationals with tech operations in Ireland. And we publish reports and we run tech events on the island of Ireland. As I said, there are about 4,500 local tech startups and scale-ups here. They attract over €1 billion a year in investment from VCs and other investors. Despite Ireland's small size, Deal Room, the international database, ranks Ireland in the top 10 in Europe, actually, for number of tech startups, and Dublin is in the top 10 regions in Europe again. And there are other tech hubs in smaller cities like Cork. I hesitate to say Cork is a smaller city because I might get shot, but other cities like Cork and Galway and Limerick. As Patrick Doyle already said, Ireland has a wonderful ecosystem of the main multinationals in IT, finance, insurance, medical devices, and what have you. But actually, we also have very strong local tech community here. The main sectors are IT, health and medical, fintech, and then all the others would be smaller than that, entertainment, sports, consumer e-commerce, agri-food, and so on. And in addition to data, we also run campaigns, including encouraging more female entrepreneurs, female tech founders, still a small percentage, but Ireland actually is among the best in Europe on that front. And we also promote and support immigrant entrepreneurs. Last month, we had a meetup with over 100 attendees, Ukrainian, Indian, and Brazilians. They would be 3 communities that are strong in tech and a very large communities here in Ireland. So we're very keen to help them put down roots in Ireland and help them to explore the database and feel at home here. And you can find all the information on Tech Ireland. It's completely freely available. It's on techireland.org. I'll put the website on the chat at the end. That's us.
Great stuff, John. Thanks very much for that. It's great to hear the interaction with the Ukrainian community already. So that's fantastic to hear. So we might come back to just a little bit later just to talk about some of the insights that you gather in your annual Pulse report every year, and just see what kind of information we're getting from that. So we might just go to Willie Dalton. Good morning, Willie. How are you?
Good morning, Larry. I'm very good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, Willie, would you just give us maybe a little bit of background? I think Trend Micro, I always know you as Trend Micro. I know you're now with a subsidiary company that are doing some really interesting things around automotive cyber security. So maybe just an intro to Trend. What initially brought a Japanese multinational to Ireland and where we are based here in Cork? And just what's been the experience of Trend in Cork so far?
Yeah, so I think we're coming up now on 21 years in Cork, and I think we were probably the first. Actually, we were the first cybersecurity company to locate in Cork. Typically, there was I remember there was 3 countries that were being assessed at the time, and for different reasons, Ireland was chosen. For things like talent, tax advantage, the ecosystem around the sport ecosystem around it. But I think Cork was chosen, I think, because, and I actually, when as part of our 20th anniversary, we had to check in with our executives to kind of refresh on how they made that decision. And they felt that Cork was a better culture fit with the company. They said Dublin was a bit more, the number one kind of, they felt that we're a bit subtle. The Japanese companies a little bit more subtle, a bit more, whatever commitment you give, you follow through on, and they felt Cork just kind of had that kind of culture fit. Now, subsequently, us being the kind of first pioneer, I guess, in regards to cybersecurity startup at the time or scale up, with the backing of IDEA, then what started to happen is other companies start to see that as a location, and now we have a really high concentration of cyber companies located in Cork. So I think we can take some credit for being the seed or the genesis of that decision.
Great stuff, William. Yeah, that's great to hear, and I especially had a little bit of a giggle with Cork being regarded as being somewhat subtle in terms of culture. I think that mightn't be a commonly shared thing within Ireland, at least, anyway. But that's great, and it's and like you guys have been really instrumental, like you said, in attracting a lot of the cybersecurity cluster to Ireland and to Cork, and have been very supportive of a lot of the startups that have developed here as well. So thanks for that, and good morning, Sinead. You're very welcome to the panel here this morning. And it would just be great to hear a little bit about, we had an interesting chat yesterday about BioInnovate, and I mentioned to you that through the angel network that we run and the syndicate that we run here, that we are seeing a constant stream of really interesting startups. And the message is always, we've started in BioInnovate. So there's something really special happening there. I think it's the model is really interesting. So it would just be great to hear a little bit about the model and what's behind the success of BioInnovate.
Absolutely. Thanks, Larry. Can you hear me okay there?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Great. Thanks, and I'm delighted to be here today. I suppose the BioInnovate Ireland programme, it's essentially an entrepreneurial training programme. So it's really supporting and demonstrating to people how to successfully innovate primarily in MedTech and digital health. I suppose just to give you a little bit of background, the programme was set up 13 years ago with the support of Ian Quinn, who was behind one of the largest Indigenous companies here, and with the support of Enterprise Ireland and the University of Galway. And really the reason it was set up here was to really try and anchor the MedTech sector in Ireland. So other sectors in Ireland have come and gone, due to different reasons. And what Ian and others at the time really wanted to do was to make sure that we didn't have an over-reliance on maybe multinationals in the sector, and that we were actually really anchoring the sector by supporting entrepreneurs and helping them to establish startups in this space and then to grow those startups. And that's really what has happened over the last 13 years. So I suppose just from a BioInnovate point of view, over those years we funded supported and trained more than 150 fellows, as well as trained more than 200 trainees from industry. And of those fellows, about half of them have gone on to startup companies. So as of now, we have more than 33 startup companies. And interestingly, 23 of those are defined as high potential startups by Enterprise Ireland. So those companies have raised more than 300 million in public and private investment. They've created close to 1,500 jobs in the country, and they have led to technologies that have already been used to treat more than 8,000 patients, and that number is growing all the time. So it's having real tangible results. And I suppose at a sector level then, it really has supported a really fantastic ecosystem. If you're interested in the MedTech and digital health space, you can't find anywhere better really than Ireland to do that here in Europe. So some kind of recent stats, I suppose. are that there are 45,000 people employed in the MedTech sector here in Ireland, which makes us, the largest employer of MedTech professionals in Europe. It's a huge amount of innovation happening here. So Ireland is the 5th per capita for medical patents. So it's just showing how much innovation is happening here. And then in terms of the top companies, as well as the indigenous startups, I think 18 of the top 25 medtech companies globally have a base here in Ireland. So there's a really thriving ecosystem. If I might for a second just go back again just to the BioInnovate program, just for anyone who's listening, who's interested in kind of coming in at the start, who's interested in innovation, who might be interested in learning more about starting up a company in the medtech, digital health or other health technology space. We recruit 12 fellows every year, and they form part of, they form 3 different multidisciplinary teams. We use a biodesign process. We're the only European affiliate of Stanford Biodesign. And we use that process to really understand the problems in healthcare before then coming up with solutions that have attractive market opportunities. And every year we are open to international candidates. So anyone who's interested in actually coming on board as part of the program, we'll be recruiting later on this year for next year. And there, we're really interested in hearing from anyone with a real interest in innovation who might come from either a clinical background, they may have a technical background, or a commercial background. So anyone with who's interested, we can find out more from our website or from talking to any of us. So.
Excellent, Sinead. Thank you so much. That's great to hear as well. At the ability for BioInnovate to recruit fellows and researchers and potential founders from nationally and internationally as well. So it's fantastic to hear. So that's great. Thank you very much. And just good morning, Irene Ward as well, who from the SEI. Irene is research, development, and demonstration manager with the SEI, and like I said, the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland is instrumental in policy implementation around what is, without doubt, one of the most important sectors for us in Ireland, but I think globally as well. So Irene, you might just give us a bit of background to SEI.
Great. Great, thanks, and morning everyone. Thanks for inviting me along. So first, SEI is Ireland's national sustainable energy authority. So we work with householders, businesses, communities, and government to create a cleaner energy future for Ireland. And we have a climate action roadmap, which was published in 2023, which I can share. And that sets out how we're going to achieve our goals of carbon emission reduction, which we have a target of 51% by 2030, and also to achieve improvements in our energy efficiency, and that's another challenging target of 50% by 2030. So how we aim to do that, we offer grants and supports to help homeowners, business owners, communities and large industry to reduce their energy costs and greenhouse gases while improving their energy efficiency. We also engage with schools, communities and different types of public and private sectors to think about how they use energy and help change opinions. But we also perform research. So we have a data and insights department, and we perform and publish statistics within an energy data portal, which I can also share. And this shows how Ireland has used energy historically across all different fuels and sectors. And then it also shows how energy use is projected to change out to 2030. And then in the department that I work in research and technology, we work at all levels of society and business to support the development of clean energy technologies in Ireland. And in our department, we have a focus on decarbonising electricity, and that includes onshore and offshore wind, ocean energy, solar and bioenergy, and also decarbonising heating and cooling systems in Ireland. A different department looks at transport, and that offers supports for electric vehicles, also sustainable mobility and other energy efficiency measures. And then my team in research, development and demonstration, we support energy research in Ireland. We fund around 40 projects each year. And since 2018, we've invested around 70 million on 250 plus projects. We're funded by the Government of Ireland through the Department of Environment, Climate and Communications, and we have a remit to develop competitive energy-related products, processes and systems, but also support solutions to overcome barriers to market entry. And then we work towards the Climate Action Plan and other major strategies. So our main areas are electricity, built environment, industry, agriculture and transport. And then we have a national energy research database where you can see all of the energy that SEAI fund, but also other funders in Ireland on energy. So areas might be energy modelling, smart grids, demand flexibility, energy storage, and then looking at offshore and ocean energy, floating offshore tidal wave energy, and also bioenergy, bioeconomy, and bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. So we've got a wide range of emerging areas in 2023 and 2024, which you may be interested in. Thank you.
Excellent, Erin. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, absolutely, we'll circle back in a while just on some of the opportunities and that are kind of unique to Ireland and to this to our kind of geography as well here. So Patrick, we might just kind of double back to yourself there again, and thank you very much for the presentation at the start. And Ireland obviously has been hugely successful over the last few decades in terms of attracting FDI. In terms of what has attracted FDI in the past and how that's changing now, are there different criteria or foreign direct investment opportunities looking at different things now, and has that kind of analysis changed for them when selecting a new location?
Yeah, I think it has, Larry, to be fair, right? So I suppose, look, probably 20, 30 years ago, obviously the tax attraction of Ireland was probably one of the key motivators. There's no point saying it's not still, that it still features, but I don't think it's probably as high a priority as it probably was traditionally. I think it's been mentioned a few times, the quality of the talent here and the quality of the ecosystem that exists here now as well as the track record here. I suppose what we find with clients is, and I'm sure Willie would say the same, being a client, is that, look, multinationals want certainty as much as possible. And I think in Ireland, you have the certainty where you can say, okay, yes, the talent is here and the work is constantly ongoing as well between third level institutes, research centres, etc., to try and consistently put more talent into the market, more innovative activity into the market. So we're seeing a big trend now is looking at, and again, government are driving this as well through policy in terms of, tax credit around research and development. There's a lot more of that activity happening here. I think our political certainty is definitely really, really important now, far more important than probably previous. I would say that comes in conversations in the top 2 or 3 things that people are looking for. So I'd say talent, as much certainty as possible around economic policy, etc. And then just, I think the sustainability piece, I think, is something that Ireland is beginning to step out on. And, we're seeing it with clients, potentially new clients looking at Ireland who are, when they're looking here, they're wondering what is Ireland's, what's Ireland's stance on sustainability? What are our green credentials? Are they real? And how can we support them to, look, most companies have targets to be net zero by 2025, 2030, 2035, etc. And how can we support them to get there if they're going to establish in Ireland? So I think that, we're seeing a lot of that activity, whether it be, Lily, obviously you have a big facility here in Cork where they've adjacent to their own facility, a 16-acre solar farm, right? So that's again helping them in their global, their Irish carbon footprint, but obviously in their global footprint as well. So I think they're kind of the key motivators. So the conversation has definitely changed from probably what it was traditionally when we were, again, a low cost country 30 years ago. We're no longer that, but where we are, we're adding a lot more value now, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that insight kind of lends itself then to the opportunities that exist for startups to kind of marry themselves with that change in requirements for FDI, and we're seeing a lot of that kind of evolve as well. And just quickly, Patrick, for our Ukrainian attendees here this morning, we're an island kind of as far away from Ukraine and Europe as possible on the west. But just talk briefly about, our position in Europe has been kind of, well known for some time, but it might be interesting just to talk about our connection with the US and how Ireland can facilitate kind of access into US FDI, but also US markets as a result.
Yeah, look, the US is our biggest market for FDI, right? I think I mentioned that in the presentation. It's long established. It's been worked at, obviously, large Irish diaspora, which helps that as well, I think, in the US side of things. But if you look at our client base here, 1,800 clients, obviously the big names that everyone knows, the Amazons, the Googles, the Metas, etc., Apple. But outside of that, like, we have a huge what could be deemed SME base, right, within our FDI base. And I think there are a lot of opportunities here for, no more than our own Indigenous companies to try and tie in with US companies in particular. I think there's a big opportunity where, particularly going back to the sustainability thing around that supply chain piece, where companies are trying to onshore their supply chain as much as possible. So I think, look, the ecosystem here is what provides that. So you have the different support agencies, obviously ourselves, Enterprise Ireland, and everyone works pretty close together. I think that's a strength of Ireland. It helps us attract, but it also helps stimulate whether it be the Indigenous Irish economy or some of our Ukrainian colleagues who might be looking to set up here as well. I think access is probably easier here than it is in other countries, I would say. So, look, a lot of the startups tend to be spillouts of maybe people who've worked in multinationals previous. BioInnovates probably would be an example of that, and there's many others as well that you would see as well, Larry. So that kind of cross-pollination happens. We probably would all like to see it happen more, but it probably happens a lot more than we think as well,
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that kind of collaboration and connectivity is increasing, improving all the time, and we're seeing the results of it. So thanks, Patrick, for that. So John, I said I'd come back to maybe to kind of chat about the insights that you guys gather in Tech Ireland on an annual basis through your Pulse survey. And what kind of information is that giving us about what's happening in our tech sector at the moment? Just unmute there, John.
Yeah, there's always one person who forgets to unmute, and I'm that person today. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. So we survey the Irish tech community, Indigenous tech startups once a year, and this year, globally, valuations are down and fundraising is more challenging, but certainly at the seed level, at the early stage level, numbers are up. Certainly, Ireland seems to weather that storm particularly well. There's great, I think, satisfaction when you talk, when people tend to complain about agencies, they tend to complain about the government not doing, but actually the feedback on the performance of Enterprise Ireland supporting tech startup is actually very positive, so it's good to see that Enterprise Ireland have stepped up and they are investing more, I guess, into early stage startups. The other thing that was interesting, kind of given today's session, 20% of the companies say that they have at least one founder who is new Irish or would call themselves an immigrant entrepreneur. So Ireland is actually the Indigenous tech startup community is actually very multinational is very open to to new nationalities and other nationalities, and that's part of its strength, actually. So if a Ukrainian founder is looking to Ireland, I think it is a hospitable place for someone who's not Irish, actually. So I think that actually is important. In terms of hiring, the mood is very positive. The strong interest in machine learning, AI, that's across the board, really. So companies that are startups that are looking to hire, they're all interested in machine learning and AI, and I know Ukraine is very strong in that space. So it's always good to look to Ireland if you're interested in a new home, as it were. And we do also kind of measure, what are the platforms that startups use here, and they're the international ones. I see we're on Zoom here, but as Zoom, I think the mood is Zoom is losing out to Google Meet and Teams, but yeah, we measure what's going on. The mood is positive, I think, and it's a growing sector here.
Excellent, John. Thanks for that. Much appreciated. And William, I might come to you again there in terms of Trend Micro, what you're seeing kind of happening in terms of innovation within cyber, and BIC One, and obviously the new initiative that you're heading up around mobility is interesting. So just kind of give us a flavour for where you see the opportunities and Trend see the opportunities both in Ireland and globally.
Yeah, so I think John mentioned there AI, so everyone's talking about AI at the moment, and but rather than maybe talk specifically about AI, maybe talk about generally how we kind of look at it in regards to, because we're like 35 years in the business now. We've seen a lot of these waves come and go, and sometimes they're manufactured because there is no technological advancement, and someone needs something to talk about, and you get a lot of these enterprise strategy groups try and cook up something to kind of generate something in the market. And sometimes it's really a novel change you see in the market, that there is a really, something substantial in regards to technical innovation. I think definitely the advancements in the recent months around AI definitely are not trivial. These are really fundamental shifts in regards to technological innovation. And specifically, I think when they focus on these large language models and throw more compute power and more variables into, they've figured out that this thing actually works a lot better, and they figured out a huge amount of use cases, and these started to then open up a plethora of different activities. And what's interesting now, though, is that it seems to be shifting now where you probably see this in some of the, like Nvidia's share price now drops because of the large language models now are actually being fully saturated within the market, because actually the opportunity for enterprise, and I think this is more the opportunity for startups, is actually a movement now to using small language models, because the large language models need a huge amounts of computational power, and that's where the likes of OpenAI with the support of Microsoft and the big hyperscalers can invest in these large amount of computational resource and capital investment to realize the benefits of the large language models. And then really large enterprise, can potentially modify some of these what are called foundational models, and then create their own large language models with huge amounts of capital investment as well. But that's not available to the SME sector or the startup sector, and also I would say general enterprise, because the capital investment is so high, and that's the reason why these large hyperscalers are able to take advantage of the opportunity more. But now with these small language models and the advancements in the chip manufacturers, you can now run these, with the NPU units on the chips, to actually run them in the PC. So the AI PC now, and actually there's just a recent announcement on it this week with Microsoft talking about Copilot and PC and some of the other vendors coming in. I think the opportunity in the startup space, specifically in AI, is actually on the small language model, and then capitalizing on that for the enterprise use cases, because they can't compete with the hyperscalers in capital investment. And what's happening right now is there was a huge shift, for example, moving everything to the cloud, and now there's the things the cloud is actually too expensive, especially for for AI use cases and how we bring that back on-prem, and that's this whole hybrid model coming back into equation. So, coming back to the original point is what we generally look at is what is the market movement? Because and somehow this is kind of a chicken and egg thing between the technology advancement, which triggers the market change, and then the market change triggers infrastructure change, and then the infrastructure change triggers user behavior change, and that's where the cybersecurity opportunity is. So the market, macro factors trigger changes in regards to infrastructure. So if we talk about AI, it's a movement from using kind of chatbots and different interface, but the infrastructure on behind is different. The market movement is triggering that infrastructure change, and the user interface with different technologies now opens up the attack surface. And then the attackers then find a low friction entry point to be able to make that a scalable technical model that they can then create a business model around and then monetize it. And that's where the wave comes around attacks, and then they figure out how to take advantage of that infrastructure change and user behavior change. So for us, it's just AI is just another wave in regards to that market infrastructure and user behavior change. And then it's about trying to predict what is that kind of change and how's that going to manifest, and then making sure your solutions protect against it. And that's what you always focus on that.
Kind of fascinating, and like the how quickly that change is happening, as well as I think it's like you said, as where the opportunity is for startup to jump onto those waves really quickly.
Maybe just another short point on that is one of the things probably need to pay attention to is that somehow there's also a risk, because you might put all in. For example, if you went all in on large language models now, you could invest a huge amount of your product strategy or your go-to-market strategy or getting ready for, and I find out that the market's actually moved on. So sometimes there's an opportunity cost by going too quick, so
yes, absolutely.
That would something to, especially in these last few months, it's moving so quick that sometimes you might need to take a breath and take a pause and actually figure out what's happening.
Yeah, and that's a good point in general in life, I think, really. That's fascinating stuff. And Sinead, I think we again, when we kind of chatted yesterday about where BioInnovate again, you're at the bleeding edge of this research, kind of is a precursor to innovation, as a precursor to products and services in the market. So what are the kind of changes that you guys have seen around digital health and medical devices over the last short while?
Yeah, so I'd say, picking up on John and William's points, that, machine learning AI has really come into the MedTech sector as well. And what I would say is, I suppose, that there's a kind of a digital revolution, really. So we're not now kind of looking at, just producing a new technology and, either implanting that or providing it for patients and stepping away and checking up on it then maybe 6 months later or a year later. What everyone's now trying to do, I suppose, is see how can we increase the kind of the real-time efficacy and feedback from the technologies that we're developing. So it's about trying to incorporate, data and really finding out how well is it working, the technology itself, and how well is it working within the patient in terms of optimizing their well-being or, treating their condition. So I think it's a tool. It's not necessarily, it's not going to be the one thing that's, that you can be completely relied on, but it's definitely a new tool now that's coming into the sector that people are looking to incorporate to really kind of maximize and future-proof, I suppose, the technologies. And with that, I think there's a great opportunity because we're bringing in, skill sets from different areas. So, for example, for the last 2 years, as well as looking for, maybe traditional mechanical engineers, we're now, recruiting for people who have maybe software engineers, data analyst backgrounds. And equally, we're also looking for people who have really diverse, experience, maybe potentially even in the pharma sector. So that's one thing that we and the Irish MedTech Association would see, is that there's really kind of breaking down of barriers and boundaries between traditionally separate sectors like MedTech, digital health, pharma, and it's an opportunity, I suppose, to learn from people with different viewpoints and bring them into, from people from pharma, or kind of the digital software side, bringing them into kind of the MedTech side, and ideally spark new and more exciting and better innovations because of having those new mindsets on board. So that's one, I suppose, trend that we're seeing. And I suppose one of the other trends that we're seeing as well is maybe a move away from your kind of really focus on acute hospital conditions in terms of, trying to develop new technologies that are, only used potentially in operating theatres, but really having looking at the problems that patients are having in their day-to-day lives, as well as those, in a hospital setting. And we see kind of a trend towards patient-centric devices and technologies. So it might not be something that will directly affect their mortality, but it may have a huge impact on a patient's day-to-day life. So, for example, one company that's come out of the program recently is looking at, a novel treatment or device that can be used to preserve hair loss during chemotherapy. And their second device is looking at protecting nerve damage during chemotherapy, so that the chemo can keep going, but also it really is about improving that patient's quality of life and allowing them to continue as well as they can without any permanent damage that might kind of alter their ability to work, drive, and to live their full life after their treatment. So they'd be, I suppose, two trends that we're seeing in the sector: the kind of digital revolution and that kind of patient-centric approach to developing technologies.
Excellent, Sinead. Thanks for that. It's just such impactful work that's going on, and the outputs in terms of products and services coming out of BioInnovate. It's really great to see the impacts it's having on quality of life for patients and the general public as well. And then I might just finish with yourself and here, and maybe looking at Ireland as a geography and as in terms of our natural resources, of which we fossil fuels wouldn't be one of our kind of main natural resources, but the amount of offshore potential wind energy, for instance, would be an opportunity. Can you just talk a little bit where the SEI are looking towards in terms of those opportunities?
Yeah, so I guess it's a combination of everything that was said before as well. I guess the digital revolution we see a lot of that coming through. So it's using the data that we have and is generated, and then using that in new ways, be it large language models or other modeling techniques. We're also looking at how demand flexibility can be built on the electricity grid, and then looking at larger strategies for maybe floating offshore wind, developing wave and tidal technologies, but also looking at the bioenergy side. So looking at, because we've got a big agricultural base in Ireland, so looking at creating more bioenergy in Ireland as well. So yeah, and it's a combination of all of those. We have topic areas which we ask for research to be done in, but then also we have an open strand where we ask for researchers to come up with their own solutions and research their own solutions. But we also look at demonstration projects, so higher technology readiness level, so bringing that out and testing things in real world situations. So we fund across the whole spectrum of energy. And then talking about collaborations and engaged research, so working with end users of research to see what is needed and will it actually work. But also collaborating with different fields, so maybe engineers working with humanities or social scientists to look at transforming energy, really, rather than working in a silo of one discipline. So we're trying to engage everyone to transform energy collectively.
Absolutely. That's great, Irene. Thanks very much. And I think we'll kind of learn a little bit more later on, but there's been a real kind of reaction in the funding landscape in Ireland around that as well. In that last year, we saw 65% of all investment that went into startups and SMEs in Ireland went into the whole area of sustainability, climate, and energy. So I think that's kind of indicative of where the opportunities are pointing at globally, but in Ireland specifically as well. Okay, look, I've really enjoyed this chat, folks. This is brilliant. We could have kept chatting away for another while. Thank you so much, Willie, Patrick, John, Sinead, and Irene. Really appreciate it. A couple of questions there from Julia around the creative sector. Look, we did focus on a few sectors here this morning. I think we can maybe get back to you, Julia. There is an interesting creative sector in Ireland as well, and we're connected in with that, so I think we can get back to you directly on that. And the same with Alexandra around real estate, property tech is we've seen a number of startups in Ireland recently around prop tech, and we can definitely link you in with. And I know that Enterprise Ireland, for instance, would have a specific kind of sectoral focus on prop tech and managers around that. So we're happy to answer you directly on that after webinar. So I'm just going to hand you back to my colleague Fionnuala Wall just for the next part of this morning's webinar. Thanks very much again, folks.
Thank you very much, guys. That's great. Super. I'd like now to introduce Niall O'Keefe, who is the head of enterprise at the local enterprise office here in Cork City. And Niall, you're very welcome to our webinar this morning. Delighted you could join us. Niall is going to give an overview of the supports that local enterprise offices all over Ireland offer to startups. So Niall, if you want to, yeah, you're way ahead of me there. You're screen sharing and everything. And we'll just see, yeah, that looks great. And we can hear you. Yeah.
Great, Fionnuala. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks a million, Niall.
The invitation and participating in this event. For the next 15 minutes, I'm going to give a brief overview of the supports that are available through municipalities, through the local authorities right across Ireland. I have a few links within the presentation that go into more details, and that will give I suppose, the terms and conditions of any of the offerings that I speak about within this presentation. But I just want to give a general overview to everyone in terms of what's available. So on the first slide here, you can see there's a link to local enterprise offices, but essentially the local enterprise offices are the first stop shop for entrepreneurship within Ireland. They focus on pre-start, start, and those looking to grow and expand businesses. There are 31 offices, as I said, and they're each located within the local authority nearest to you. So again, when you have this slide, you can click on the link and it'll tell you the office closest to where people are going to be operating or wish to operate. Just to back up some of the comments made in the earlier session, Ireland is a small place. The ecosystem is small. A lot of people know each other, and the local enterprise office is a signposting organisation in many instances as well. So when people come to us at the early stages of business development, we will signpost to our colleagues in other organisations, whether it's AxisBIC or whether it's Enterprise Ireland, who fund the local enterprise offices, SEAI, and the whole range of services. So our purpose essentially in one line is to support businesses and entrepreneurs to manage the risk in growing and developing a business so they can be sustainable, employ more people, and look to export. But going through line by line, we promote entrepreneurship, we foster business startups, we help developing and existing micro and small businesses. We support businesses that employ up to 50 people and with a turnover of less than 2 million. We drive job creation. We provide high quality supports for businesses, for ideas at all stages of development, and provide opportunities for professional and personal development.
Niall, just before you move on there, Fionnuala, there's a little echo. I don't know if you can do anything about it. There's an echo on your sound, but I actually don't know if you can do anything about it, but I just said I'd say it. Your screen is perfect.
Is that any better?
Oh, that's much better. That's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm glad you did. I was unaware, so thank you. For anybody that telephones or contacts a local enterprise office anywhere in the country, when you've got an idea, you're offered a business advice clinic after a conversation in terms of what your plans are. And the business advice clinic is free of charge. You get an hour with somebody who will tease out your idea with you, challenge you, and again, signpost you back to the local authority who give you advice. And sometimes at this stage, it'll help people determine whether or not they want to move forward with an idea, or whether it reinforces their belief that they should move forward. One of the very strong areas for local enterprise offices is that all of us are continually providing training programs. Many of these training programs are free of charge, or are very low cost. The examples we give, we help people with sales, HR issues, social media, finance, branding. It could be how to set the cost of your service or product. Increasingly, we're looking at niche areas as well, that the local enterprise office would be responding to community needs. So, for example, we might give programs on how to be effective on LinkedIn. We might give training on how to utilize ChatGPT to be more efficient or effective. So again, these are very low cost programs. Some of them are online, some of them are in person. There's a big mix. The most common one that people avail of with us would be Start Your Own Business program. We would have large numbers who participate in that program. Again, they vary. They could be in person, they could be online, they could be over 2 days or 6 evenings. Again, you contact or keep an eye on your local enterprise office and see what programs are nearby. As people move on through the development journey, and I think what the local enterprise office wants to do is partner with entrepreneurs on their journey, again, to help manage the risk. But if people come to us, generally they have a skill set. It might be tech, it might be creative, as the questions have been asked earlier, but there might be a gap in knowledge. So if somebody has been trading in their business for a period of time, 6 months, you can avail of mentoring for up to 9 hours with someone who's a specialist in an area. So we would have broad panels of specialists in areas. Some are general business people, but if there's a skill or advice that you require, you get free mentoring for up to 9 hours. And for example, you might pick marketing as being the area that you want support. And following marketing, you might decide that it's branding, or it might be costing. You can avail of other supports in that area, again, free of charge. Other supports that we have for businesses, and again, because there are so many in the suite, this isn't an exhaustive list, and the link is there so people can follow. But some of our more popular ones is that if you are trading for 6 months and you want to develop a website or a digital presence, you can get matched funding up to €2,500 for developing your website. Obviously, anything to do with environment, sustainability, and governance is hugely important and prominent for all businesses. It was outlined earlier about the level of foreign direct investment in Ireland. And if you're intend on providing services or products to those businesses, your ESG will be required immediately. And as regulation moves on, all businesses will be required to produce reports. So we provide consultants free of charge to businesses who will visit your premises, look at your expenditure, look at your technology and equipment, and give a report recommending what implementation would reduce your costs. And there's also, you can make an application for matched funding. These sums of money are varying at present, but currently it's €5,000 matched funding for an energy efficiency grant. So for example, you might be in the hospitality sector and you might want to replace fridges or old equipment within your facilities. You can get up to 50% to a cap of €5,000 currently funding. Also, systems, processes, everyone wants to be more lean and effective. Again, a consultant will monitor how you operate, what your process systems are, and make recommendations free of charge. You can get supports for digitization. A lot of people are moving from analog to digital. Increasingly, we're hearing about people wanting to employ AI systems. Again, there are supports to help you become more efficient and effective to drive down costs. if all businesses require finance, if there are challenges in securing a loan through your local enterprise office, you can apply to Microfinance Ireland. If you haven't had support from other financial institutions, and you can achieve, now your business must be sustainable, but you can achieve a loan at 1% less than the current market rate for loans. We also provide matched funding to certain businesses. Now, I've written in here big print terms and conditions apply. These are essentially for businesses that are operating on internationally traded services or in the manufacturing areas. But there are financial supports available. We work with businesses up to 50 million people, as I said earlier, with an annual turnover of less than 2 million people. And if we can't support you within that criteria, we will signpost you to other organizations or state bodies that can. So there are 3 key areas where funding is available. If you want to do feasibility, if there's a technology or some research that you want to do to establish the feasibility of a project, a concept, or a business, there is matched funding up to a maximum of €15,000, which can cover the costs of market research, consultancy costs, developing a prototype, and in certain circumstances, some of your own labor. Just to be clear again, health warning, nothing can be done retrospectively. You require approval, and you must spend all of the monies before you claim back. So based on receipted vouchers and expenditure, you will receive the agreed money that's been approved by your local enterprise office under feasibility. Again, there are 2 grants that are similar. The differentiation is the time of the registration of the business. And just to point out that these businesses must be registered in Ireland and must have a resident or a citizen of the European Union as a director to make a submission. If your business was registered for less than 1.5 years, 18 months, you apply for a priming grant, and the maximum that's allowable locally is €50,000. Again, match funding must be approved in advance, but it can cover the costs of capital items, including fit out of workspace, particular consultancy or innovation, marketing costs, and there's also support for employment, and if you're employing people. And it's a scaled process depending on how much you're going to pay the employees. If you're paying somebody around minimum wage, you can get up to €7,500 contribution. If you're paying somebody on the highest scale, over €40,000, you can achieve €15,000 in supports for that business. Then once you've expended those monies, if you've been successful in coming through the feasibility, you don't have to, but if you come through priming grant, a year after that, as you go to the next phase of your business and you're looking to engage in business expansion, you can once again apply. Now, if you're attending your local enterprise office and your business has been in place for longer than 18 months, you go directly to business expansion. Other supports that are available include technical assistance from micro exporters. So essentially what this is, we want people to export from Ireland. If you're attending a particular exhibition or conference or an event where you're going to meet potential customers and buyers, or if you're promoting your product or service, you can apply for matched funding to a maximum of €2,500 to attend overseas events. Again, must be approved in advance, and you can avail of one of those per year. So you can say this year that you want to visit Las Vegas, next year it could be London or Berlin or wherever it is that you think will suit your business best, but one per annum per business. As your business grows and expands, if you employ in excess of 5 people, you can apply for a grad start. And that's essentially taking somebody who's been a relatively recent graduate to work on a specific project for you. And you can avail of €30,000 over a 2-year period. There is an additional fund if that person that you're looking to apply, that graduate, is a language specialist, and there's an increased sum of money for that. And again, I mentioned earlier, Digital Start. It's a program to assist people in developing a digital strategy to become more efficient and effective. I mentioned that we are funded by Enterprise Ireland. We have very close relationship with Enterprise Ireland, and we have access to some of their facilities and services, including their market research, where they have tremendous detail, UK and Ireland, across Europe and globally, in terms of what trends are happening within markets, what's the scale, what's the volume, and the value of participating in that market. Another really interesting offering that comes through Enterprise Ireland is an innovation voucher. So Enterprise Ireland has a relationship with all of the universities, and if there's a conundrum, a question that you need resolved and would like some experts to research that area, you can apply for an innovation voucher to the value of €10,000 to tease out and solve that challenge. Now, you can avail of 3 innovation vouchers where you don't have to make a financial contribution. You can also apply for a 4th and final voucher where there's a matched fund where you pay 5,000 and you get 5,000 from EI. So essentially, technically, on the development of a product or a journey, you can avail of up to €40,000 worth of specialist research through a university for €5,000. Again, this is just a sample of some of the offerings that are available. To point out, we 31 local enterprise offices, because of our geographic location, have different areas that we work in. Some might be more agricultural leaning, more rural, smaller town, and some are based within large urban settings. So we work in different areas. Some of the other supports here is just a sample of some of the offerings and supports that are there. You'd have to look at your own local enterprise office, see what other areas that they're looking at. But we're also open to ideas and suggestions. Today, as it happens, the 23rd of May 24, we have the National Enterprise Awards in Dublin, where each local authority, local enterprise office has nominated a winner from their region, and there'll be National Enterprise Awards, and that brings very high profile and financial rewards for the applicants. On an annual basis, we have a National Women's Enterprise Day. Obviously, female entrepreneurship is something we focus on all year round, and we would have specific programs for female entrepreneurs. As it happens, in our office in Cork City, 2/3 of the businesses and entrepreneurs we deal with, particularly on a training and development side, would be female. And on a financial side, we're close to 50-50 male-female in terms of funding that's available. Cork City Fund Network Ireland. In our region, it's a national area for female entrepreneurship and support. As it happens, they have an award ceremony on today as well. Showcases a national event where international buyers come in for craft and design. I know there's a question earlier on craft, but there's a national event happens in January over 3 days in the RDS in Dublin, and large-scale buyers come in and meet with producers and sellers. We support businesses to participate in that. One of the large events that happens nationally in Ireland is the Ploughing Championships, and there's often the World Ploughing Championships. We'd have an attendance of about 150,000 people at that over 3 days, and we support businesses to participate in that. Tremendous footfall. Most of the local enterprise offices would have a summer show, and we would take stands and stalls. And it's an opportunity for entrepreneurs, particularly at the early stage, to trial a product or a service. We organise trade events nationally and internationally. Some of my colleagues are just returned from Birmingham in the UK, where some of our food producers went there to look at exploring the export market. We work with clusters. We try to get people working more closely together. So whether it's early stage entrepreneurs or people who could benefit or do benefit from being involved in sectoral groups. Again, going back to the craft piece, in our offices here, we're doing some work around animation for the Munster region, including 6 counties. We're also exploring a southwestern region with Cork and Kerry in terms of film. So we obviously look at craft. And I suppose the non-direct academic skill sets that are in abundance here to promote those to a national and international market. And again, finally, and it's not exhaustive, but we work very closely with the European Enterprise Network, with the Chambers of Commerce and all the local enterprise offices here, where we connect businesses within the country or outside the country with each other. So if you have a product or a service, You might want it manufactured in Ireland, or you might want it manufactured overseas. We help create a profile, we make connections and get people not just across Europe, but and right across the world, create profile and presence for businesses to help them to grow and develop. So I'm going to finish at that. I didn't realize the final slide did that with the curtains. Again, when Fionnuala shares the link, when you click on local enterprise office, it'll bring you to a national map. You can click on the area most local to you, and you can make contact there, but find out what specific programs are happening within the area, what training that'll help you to develop your idea. So we look forward to hearing from people.
Fantastic, Niall. Thank you very much for giving us an overview of the incredible supports that the local enterprise offices offer, particularly early stage companies, of which I'm sure there's quite a few on this call. So really appreciate your support, and I'll be happy to share the presentation with our attendees. So thanks very much. Now we will move on to the regulatory and commercial environment, and I ask Anna Folsom, who's Corporate Associate of DLA Piper, who's our pro bono legal partner in the Seeds of Bravery, and Conor McEnany, who is Legal Director in DLA Piper, both of whom are based here in Dublin, in their Dublin office. Delighted to have you both participate in our webinar today. So I will let you share your slides and you can get going. So welcome, Conor and Hannah.
Yeah, Hannah's just going to... Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm going to share my screen here, so hopefully this works.
That's looking good.
Can people see that at all? No?
We can. It's just not in full screen.
Hold on, let me change
our slideshow.
Hold on.
No, you're fine. It seemed to a few people when they shared it, it just was delayed by a couple of seconds, the screenshot. Perfect. That looks great.
Is that us? Okay,
perfect.
Great.
I leave you at it. Thank you very much, Conor and Hannah.
Thank you. You can hear me all right, yeah, Hannah?
Yep.
Yeah, you're great. Okay, so the purpose of our session is to bring to, I suppose, everyone's attention a small number of the key issues that you need to think about from a legal perspective when setting up a business in Ireland. Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of things we could touch on here. We've just cherry-picked a small number given the time constraints, and speaking to kind of myself and Hannah's areas of expertise, which are corporate law and intellectual property, technology, data protection. So there's a lot to think about, but what we're going to do is just give you an overview of a couple of key issues to have them forefront of your mind to be thinking about when you're establishing or scaling your business in Ireland. But if there's one key thing, I suppose, that we want to get across in the message today is there's a whole number of things that you need to think about. It can often be, I suppose, one of the last things you're thinking about at the start of your journey and when you're scaling the business. And in our experience, it's oftentimes at that early stage when things start to go wrong. So to use one example, which I'll go into in a little more detail later on in the presentation, is oftentimes where the key to your business is you've developed a particular product, maybe a software product, and obviously a lot of the value then in the business is going to be in the intellectual property that the company has developed. And let's say that the software code was created by one of the co-founders of the business before the business was actually incorporated as a company. So the default position under Irish law in that scenario would be that the copyright in the software code was actually owned by the founder and not the company. So if that was never addressed, you could see a scenario, and we often do see scenarios like this, where 2-3 years down the road, that particular company is after scaling, it's doing very well, it's selling the software in the market. There's an investment someone wants to make into the company, or indeed even the company is being acquired, and lawyers get involved, and that founder that may have created the code has moved on somewhere else, and it turns out the company itself doesn't actually own the copyright in the software, which is the key value in the business. So that's a kind of, just to give a quick example of why these kind of things are very important, and it's really important to be thinking about them from the start. So we want to give you a sense of that, and then also just flag that we as a firm are very keen to help companies at this stage of their journey. And we recognize that, obviously this stage of the journey, when revenue is only starting to come in, one of the last things you want to be doing is spending a whole lot on legal fees. So we've created a series of documents and guides, which we call the Startup Pack, which we would give free to anyone that's starting a business, which contains all of the key legal documents that you need at the start of your journey, including things like employment contracts, non-disclosure agreements, articles of memorandum of association, shareholders agreements, those kind of key documents you need when you're starting out to make sure that everything is what it should be from a legal perspective, and also then really helpfully a guide to help you you fill in the blanks basically in those documents to tailor them to your particular needs as a business, so that you don't need to paying for lawyers at an early stage. Obviously, as you scale up, then things will become more complicated and you will need to involve lawyers. So that's important. We can talk about that a little bit towards the end. So I'll hand over to Hannah now, who's going to speak about some of the key issues that you need to be thinking about when you're establishing your business and incorporating it as a company, and then I'll speak on some intellectual property and data protection issues in a moment. Over to you, Hannah.
Excellent. Thank you, Conor. So yes, as Fionnuala said, I'm a member of the corporate department, and often with early stage companies, what the question is, well, what way should my company be organized? And often it's making the decision between being a sole trader or whether you should incorporate into a limited company. And that's often, there comes a point at which it might make sense if you are currently acting as a sole trader, where it might then make sense to incorporate your company and transfer over to being a limited entity in Ireland. And just to give you kind of a high level overview of the advantages and disadvantages of being a limited company. So the first thing, and probably the most important thing to note, is when you are a sole trader, all of the profits of the business are yours. And that is not the case when you're a limited company. So when you're a limited company, the main difference there is the company itself is a legal entity. So that means if you're entering into contracts, if you're hiring employees, that the company hires those employees and not you personally. And what that does is it gives you a level of protection from creditors, so that you as an individual person, that gives you a level of protection with your assets from the business. So to go through a few of the advantages and disadvantages of being a limited company. So if you are to incorporate in Ireland and become a limited company, there is formal registration and filing requirements every year. So you have to submit your financial statements every year. Now, for most companies, you're going to be below the threshold to have to file, because you'll fall under the small companies exemption. But at a point where you scale, or perhaps you're taking on investment, you might hit that threshold and you'll have to file your accounts annually. You'll have to include extensive information on the CRO. So the CRO is the company's registration office. And the information that you need to file will include information on the directors. So for example, your name, your date of birth, and your residential address will be publicly available. And if you are to incorporate as an entity in Ireland, you're going to have to appoint directors. So you'll either have to appoint 2 directors, with one of them acting as a secretary, or you can appoint yourself as a sole director, and you can have a separate entity as a secretary. So the caveat with that then is that as a director, you owe director's duties under Irish law to the company. So you have a responsibility to act in the interests of that company and to maintain its solvency, and you act in the interest of your creditors as well. And so the final point here with the disadvantages in having a limited company is that the profits are owned by the company and not the owners directly. So what that means is all the profits of a company, where they previously were owned by you as a sole trader, that's not the case anymore. Once you incorporate, the profits belong to the company, and you can't use those profits for personal reasons. You have to use them for expenses of the business. So if you want to take profits out of the company, you either have to extract them by way of dividend, and you'd have to take financial tax advice on that, or you'd have to pay yourself a salary from the company directly. And then the advantages of being a limited company. So if you are expecting to take on investment from investors or third parties, well then by being a limited company, there's an element of publicity to the company and what you do and your financial statements. So that allows investors to review and essentially assess the validity of your company when it comes to them diligencing you and assessing risk in investing in your company. So you have limited liability for debts, and that is the level of protection which I referred to earlier. So there's a barrier there between you and your creditors. So your personal assets, not always the case, but they are protected when you incorporate and the entity is responsible for the business. And then another thing, so this relates to the investor and third-party expectations, so it's easier for you to raise external finance. This will be negotiated with whoever is investing in the company. They may wish to take equity in the company by coming on as a shareholder. And then the final point is the corporation tax is usually lower than employment tax. So here, and you can read these once you have the slides. So with a limited company, your management and your ownership is split. That means your directors and your shareholders, often they're the same people, but it's not always the case. Again, the company has separate legal personality. You have limited liability for your debt. You can sell your shares to raise finance. And there are formal decision-making processes and requirements to publish information publicly. So just to think of a few practical considerations when you're thinking about the next stage and incorporating as a company in Ireland. One thing to mind is it is quite a straightforward process. It's not too difficult and it's not too expensive to incorporate. So there's no need to delay incorporation. You can do it and it's relatively cheap. More than plenty of service providers around. So when you're documenting the funders and the shareholders, at the outset, it's crucial to document this and have it in writing on paper. And the sort of package Conor referred to, we have template documents and then drafting notes as well. So it allows you to avoid comparing high cases with listeners, but also it allows you to put some paperwork in place to protect yourself. So incorporation allows the business to organize other aspects, so there's tax benefits, there's employment, but also there's some IP, there can be IP protections, the company can be an entity which owns IP, which Conor discuss just a few comments.
Sorry, Hannah, just your sound has become very hard to hear. I don't know what has happened. It was perfect up to about 30 seconds ago. So
you can jump in anyway when Hannah sorts that out. Hannah, if you just go on to the next slide there, if you can.
No, we're not hearing you properly.
Yeah, just move on the slides there, Hannah, if you can. So as I was saying at the start, I'm going to speak about intellectual property and data protection issues that you need to have at the forefront of your mind. Now, obviously, very big topics, and there's a whole lot you could speak about. You could have a whole day-long session on this. So just going to pick out a couple of very high-level things to make sure that they're at the forefront of people's minds. And everything we're speaking about here today has been informed by our experience as lawyers. DLA Piper is a big international law firm, and we tend to see these issues that come up again and again when the time comes for either an investment round, so when the business is going well and it's scaling, or else even further down the road when the company is maybe being acquired, so the business has done really well and a larger company wants to buy it. And obviously, as part of those kind of processes, there's legal due diligence, and lawyers will sift through everything, trying to look for any issues, and then those issues can often become a major price point if there's something at issue. So these are very real world issues that can really come back to be an issue further down the road. So we're trying to give everyone a benefit of what we've seen in our experience of things that do go wrong all the time, so that they get addressed and they don't go wrong for you. So one thing I wanted to talk about today was, at a very high level, what are the key IP rights we need to talk about and we need to be thinking about from the perspective both of, well, primarily, I suppose, from the perspective of making sure that you are protecting the key value in your company that you're developing. You're developing a product, a process, something in which there's intellectual property rights where you can protect them, and making sure that you're doing that in the right way. So in essence, at a very high level, all of these intellectual property rights, what they do is they give you a monopoly. So they basically allow you to be the only one to use or get the benefit of the particular intellectual property. So going through each of them in turn, if you have a business where you have invented something, so this can be anything right the range through from a pharmaceutical drug to a new process to a piece of machinery, something like that, where that's the key or a key element of your business, then you should be thinking immediately about, how do I protect that? How do I get a patent? What's the benefit of doing that? very simply, it gives you a monopoly, usually for 20 years. So to take the one I suppose we all think about now post COVID-19, if you had invented a COVID-19 vaccine and you've getting patent protection in that, that means you have a monopoly for 20 years. You can be the only one that can sell that particular drug for 20 years. So obviously from a commercial perspective, that's hugely important. You spent a whole lot of time and money researching something. You invented something, be that a drug or a piece of machinery. You now want to get the benefit of that research, that time and effort you put in, and you do that by getting a patent right, a patent protection on it. So for the purposes of today's call, I won't go into how you get that, but a really important practical takeaway that I want to make sure everyone's aware of is, if you have something that you think might be patentable, that you might be able to get a patent for, the most important thing you can be doing while you're going about and investigating that process and you're developing that particular invention, drug, whatever it might be, is that you make sure that you are not telling everybody about it in the absence of a non-disclosure agreement. So anytime you tell anyone about it, you need to make sure that they're signing a non-disclosure agreement. We have a non-disclosure agreement in that legal startup pack, and Fionnuala, we can share that link with you, and you can share with everyone post the end of the meeting. So we would really strongly encourage you that, let's say you're talking to banks, you're talking to investors, and you're saying, we have this really game-changing product, this invention, this is what it is, this is how it works. You need to make sure they're signing a non-disclosure agreement, because part of the test for getting a patent is that you basically check that, or the patent registry will check whether the invention is actually new, and it won't be considered to be new if you've been basically showing everyone in the public it, without them signing a non-disclosure agreement. So that's really important. Then taking, I suppose, that principle to the next level, a really important point then is, and I touched on this at the start, was making sure that the intellectual property that's key to your business is actually owned by your company. So Hannah's spoken about the importance of incorporating your business as a company for a whole bunch of reasons, including limited liability for yourselves. But once you have that done, it's really important that the valuable assets of your business are owned by that company, not by the individual founders, or not by the individual employees or contractors. So that can manifest itself in a whole bunch of ways, but I always think the simplest way to think about it is software. So if you have a business that's developing software, or it's maybe a part of that business, and either a founder has written some of the software code, or you had a contractor come in, someone without a formal relationship, they're clearly not an employee, they came in to do a piece of work, develop a piece of software, some website content, something like that. The default position under Irish law is both of those individuals are going to own the copyright in that software and not the company. Now, you can change that by making sure there's a contract in place between the company and the individual, saying basically, you're doing some software development work for us as a contractor. We all agree that once that's done, we own the intellectual property rights in that software. So just be thinking about that at all times. So founders, contractors, you need to make sure that there's basically some paperwork saying that the company owns the intellectual property rights, the copyright in whatever's been developed, and not the individual. Generally speaking, with employees, if they are an actual employee of the company, the default Irish law position is the company will own it. But to be absolutely certain, it should be something in your employment contract. Again, we have templates of those contracts that we're giving away to everyone for free as part of the startup pack that will have that covered off. So that's a really important point. So that's on the IP in context of the company. So what's the IP that's coming into the company that's been developed? Think about, does the company actually own it? That's really important. And then on the IP outside, once you've developed your particular IP, whether that's an invention or whether, let's say, again, we'll go back to the software example, you develop a piece of software and you now want to sell it, then it's really important that the way you're selling it, that you're thinking about that carefully. What we often see is people will take terms and conditions from a competitor, from a bigger company's terms and conditions of their software as a service or something like that, and kind of create a hodgepodge terms and conditions, and then say, this is what we're selling to the market, these are the terms and conditions for selling it. And then sometimes what that will do is inadvertently, it won't protect your IP in an optimal way. So at a very simple level, what you're trying to do is to make sure that you're not giving away something that's commercially valuable. And a really simple way of illustrating that is, you will often see terms and conditions that say, we hereby license you to use our software for the following purpose for the following period of time. But where there can be sometimes danger in that is, you'll often see ones on, websites, terms and conditions, where it'll say fully sublicensable. And the issue with that is if you're the person that's selling or licensing the software that you spent a whole lot of time and money developing, and you're giving it to one customer who's paying you, if you say it's fully sublicensable, that means that that customer is fully entitled to take that software and onward sell it to hundreds, thousands of other people that by rights should be your customers, not theirs. And so that's a really important point, how the devil really is in the detail on some of the stuff, that one word could have a really materially negative commercial impact on you. So again, just something to be thinking about when time comes to I'm selling something to the market. Really take the time to look at how you are constructing those terms and conditions. If there's one or two things that you have budget to spend on lawyers, that might be one of the key things, because the last thing you want to do is spend all this time developing something and then give it away for free. So just to really quickly round up then on key messages on IP, when you have developed something valuable, make sure you're using a non-disclosure agreement when sharing that with people, because if it is patentable, for example, you could be destroying your ability to patent it if you're telling people without an NDA. Making clear in your own head what IP you have in the company, how you're protecting it, and really importantly, who owns it. And if it's not the company that's been incorporated, you need to get it into the company. Then making sure that when you're selling or licensing out the IP you've developed, again, using the example of if you have software product, how you're licensing that to market, making sure you're really importantly paying attention to how you're doing that. Words really are important there. And if you just go on quickly to the next slide there, Hannah, conscious of time. Again, huge other topic. We could spend the whole day talking about data protection law and GDPR. I think everyone's familiar with it now. Everyone's frightened of it, which is probably the right way to be. It is something that is quite manageable. You just don't want to leave it till very late in the day to start to worry about it, because again, it is something when an investment round happens or when you're potentially being bought, that this is going to become really important. And also really importantly, it is something you can be fined for by a regulator, and it is something that customers and consumers are very conscious of now about how their personal data has been handled. And therefore, if you're mishandling it or you're not handling it in the way that you should in accordance with law, it is something that customers can get be complaining about. And ultimately, if they complain about it, can hit your reputation, people can take their business elsewhere, and importantly, you can actually get fined for it. So what it basically does is set out a framework of how you are to handle people's personal data. A really important point to understand is personal data, the term is, as it's defined in the GDPR, is extremely broad. We won't go into a big discussion on it now, but basically, if in doubt, it is personal data. So it can be things like, just because it's not someone's name doesn't mean, oh, well, it's not personal data. It could be someone's phone number, PPS number, anything like that. Anything from which a living individual can be identified, that's personal data. So it is a really broad scope. And at a very high level, you need to be very clear in telling people, if you're processing their personal data, how you're doing that, what you're doing with it, how long you're using it for, why you're doing it, what's the legal basis that you're processing or handling the personal data. And then there's also basically there's a whole bunch of other things like contractual requirements. If you're taking on, let's say, a third-party service provider to provide you with some form of outsourced service, and as part of that, they're going to be dealing with some of your customers' personal data, then there are certain things that need to be in that contract. So again, what we have in the startup pack, if Annie just want to go on to the next slide, is we have a whole bunch of really important documentation and really useful documentation in terms of the actual documents you can use from like a non-disclosure agreement. What you need to be doing there is just really putting in your own company name and whoever it is you're sharing the information with, and that's ready, that's good to go. Right the way through checklists in terms of data protection, how to protect your IP, what you should think about when you're having your first employees. That could be really useful and will allow you up to a certain stage to just make sure you're not making any of the big mistakes that we've kind of flagged as danger risk areas for you here. And then it will also enable you to be thinking about, when's the right stage that I now need to I'm getting into really complex stuff, and when's the right stage that I need to then get involved with lawyers. I think that's also a really useful piece. So we'll share that. You get, there's a kind of a QR code there you can use, but we'll also share that with everyone post the meeting or post the presentation. So conscious that that was quite a whistle-stop tour, just kind of raised a whole bunch of issues, probably frightened some people. But I think it's really important that these are all things that are front of your mind at various different stages of your growth journey. Because, as I said, these are things that we've seen go wrong for people that are in your position, particularly as they start to scale. So if nothing else, if these things are now front of your mind, to be conscious of them, and then you also start to use either that startup pack that we're sharing, or maybe you already have a relationship with a law firm that maybe makes that discussion a bit more informed. Hopefully that will be of some value to people today. So yeah, that's it. I'll hand back to you, Fionnuala. That was great. Hopefully people got something from it.
Fantastic, Conor. Thank you so much, and Hannah. And I think that starter legal pack looks really interesting, and certainly looks something that I think will be hugely beneficial and useful.
I hope you've been enjoying all of the presentations and the webinar so far. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and so we're into the second half of it now. And so I think we're going to start to look at, I think, an area that a lot of tech startups are going to be very interested in. And that's the whole area of venture capital and raising funding for technology startups and what that looks like in Ireland. So we're going to start off. So Sarah Jane Larkin, the Director General of the Irish Venture Capital Association, has been very kind to join us this morning, and is going to give us a presentation on the overview of equity investment trends in Ireland. So that's we're going to lead off with that, and Sarah is going to join us for a panel discussion. We're going to have an angel investor representing VC crowdfunding, and Anna-Marie Turley from Enterprise Ireland is going to step on again and just talk to us some more about the what's available through Enterprise Ireland. So looking forward to this session. I hope you are. And Sarah Jane, good morning, and thanks again very much for helping us out this morning.
Good morning, Larry, and good morning, everyone. Can I just check that you can see and hear me okay?
Loud and clear, yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, my job today is to take you through really a high-level overview of equity investment trends in Ireland in the last year and what we're seeing so far in 2024. And then, as Larry said, we have a panel discussion afterwards with people who actually invest, which will probably be a bit more rich and valuable. So I won't take up too much of your time with the presentation. I guess the first thing to say about the investment landscape in Ireland, and sorry, I'm just trying to move through my slides here and they're slightly stuck, so bear with me. Oh, there we are. So the first thing to say is that it's the venture capital and private equity funds that operate in Ireland. We, as an association, we are about to celebrate our 40th year next year in operation. So the industry here is quite long-standing, and for a lot of those 40 years was very much venture capital based and really focusing at early stage and seed stage, and the industry here was developed and supported by a lot of support from Enterprise Ireland through the Seed and Venture scheme, and some of which is also, I think, probably 40 years old or maybe a little longer than that even. So there's a number of funds, both in venture capital and private equity, who are operating in Ireland now. And in the last probably 10 years, the range of funding that is available here, the depth of it has really transformed. And even, I know Seamus is here from the Bull Syndicate, even in terms of the development of angel networks and syndicates, all of those funding possibilities exist in Ireland, right through the stack of funding that you might need. And I know there was talk earlier about Microfinance Ireland and some of the grant and matching funding, but there really is a suite and a deck of funding to take you through a lot of your fundraising journey in Ireland. These are our figures which look at the full year last year, and we would say last year that we had quite a strong year overall, particularly in comparison with a lot of what was going on throughout the rest of Europe. So, and if I take you through kind of counterintuitively, starting, at the seed stage and moving back up, a performance in seed where we were flat on the previous year was actually, you know, quite a strong performance given the global outlook. And I think seed funding in some markets throughout Europe was down by up to 40%. So to come in flat year on year was a pretty strong performance. And I think a lot of that really is a testament to the local funds that are present in the market and the involvement of Enterprise Ireland in funding some of those funds and allowing us to actually really invest in a counter-cyclical way. So when the rest of Europe and in the case of last year, the rest of the world had quite a lean year, you know, we were able to, you know, to really fund our early stage companies. And that trend continued through to, you know, the levels of around 3 to 5 million. We start to see in Ireland a dip in deals above 5 million and 10 million. And we start to see those whenever the global tide is out and whenever fundraising is difficult in the global environment, because a lot of deals of, you know, that are north of 5 million and certainly north of 10 million, they rely a lot on overseas co-investors coming in and investing with Irish VCs. So while we have quite a stable funding environment locally and can fund companies even in poor economic cycles, we can fund companies here. But once you start requiring and needing capital above 5 million, we really are impacted by the global environment. And then obviously on the 30 million plus rounds there, you can see that was up by 36%. So, you know, really bucking that trend. But that really was in large part due to one deal of 300 million actually into a Cork-based company as we're talking here. So that kind of skews those figures, and those ones of 30 million, while we track them, they really are outliers and probably not indicative of the overall health of the market here. So I think in summary, you know, 1.3 billion was raised by Irish SMEs last year. And that was flat on the year before overall. So quite a strong performance for Irish companies, and really a lot of funding available, particularly at early stage for VC-able companies. And then, you know, taking a look at some of the sectors, you know, that achieved funding, as I think Larry, when in the earlier session with Sustainable Energy Ireland, and we talked about you know, ESG and environmental considerations, companies that are operating in the envirotech space did really well last year, both in Ireland and globally. And I think it's probably no surprise to anybody on this call that, you know, given the huge challenges we face in terms of climate instability and climate change, you know, a lot of funding is going into innovative companies that really may help, you know, leapfrog and solve in a very radical way some of the challenges that we're facing. So environmental industries and envirotech, you know, taking 45% of the funding is quite a new phenomenon, and environmental industries performing so well is something that's probably only happened in the last number of years. And some of that is in large part due to the, you know, the really deep funding needs of some of those companies. So some of the round sizes there are extremely large. And then I know we heard from BioInnovate last year, and certainly the work that they have done has really had an impact on that 17% figure for life sciences. And life sciences funding in Ireland has transformed in the last number of years and become a really, really, really strong player and a really significant sector. And the companies that come from BioInnovate and those type of innovators initiatives, which we're delighted to see there are more of now in Ireland, it tend to be really strong, really high caliber, and very, as we would say, VC-able, very suitable for VC investment. And then you can see, you know, the rest of the sectors there, you know, performing reasonably well, but the couple of large deals in environmental technologies and environmental industries has kind of skewed the overall picture there. And then if I were to kind of just go a little bit more granular around those deals, you can see here, you know, who the companies are that achieved really large funding rounds, and the types of areas that they're involved in. So that 300 million deal that I referenced earlier for Amarenco is in there, and that they're a pan-European provider of environmental projects, quite large scale projects throughout Europe. So 300 million there is a really significant investment, but less so in the context of the work that they're involved in. And the spread of companies there, you can see obviously there's another 150 million, but everything after that, the larger rounds, quite a lot going into environmental industries and electric vehicle charging, envirotech, some in fintech, AI and machine learning software, and also, as I mentioned, the life sciences industry. And every quarter we track data, and we're just about to publish our Q1 for 2024. And while on an overall level it's going to look as though it's down significantly, a lot of that is due to the fact that Amarenco transaction was Q1 last year. So when you strip out that 300 million investment into one company last year, it looks significantly more healthy. And while seed funding was flat last year, it has grown significantly in Q1 this year, and is looking very healthy and really quite robust in an environment where I think seed funding throughout Europe was down by about 20% in Q1. So we're certainly going to overshoot that and really outperform those European trends in this year. So there are a number of seed funds, and I know Amy is on the panel later, but there are a number of seed funds actively investing in early stage companies in Ireland. And so it's a very good time to be a company that's based here and trying to seek funding. So I think that's my whistle stop tour around the funding landscape in Ireland. And I hope I haven't taken up too much time, Larry, and left enough time for the discussion.
No, that's been perfect, Sarah. Very succinct and very clear. Thank you very much. I look some nice, encouraging kind of notes towards the end there. So we might look at that in a bit more detail in a while. So much appreciated, Sarah Jane. Thanks very much. So as I said, we've put I think what's a very interesting panel together this morning, just to discuss the various kind of levels of investment and types of investors that are contributing to the data that Sarah Jane just showed there, and in particular a focus around the early stage. I think the attendees on this morning's call, and the focus of this of Seeds of Bravery Project is around kind of early stage deep tech startups. So I would have a particular interest in pre-seed, seed, and Series A. So I think the focus is going to be very much on that. So on the panel this morning, just quick intros. I'll go to each person individually to introduce themselves properly. So we have Seamus Ivers, who's the chair of the Bull Investment Syndicate, and a seasoned angel investor with a number of investments and exits to date. We have Amy Neal, a general partner of Delta Partners, who are a venture capital firm with a long-standing history in Ireland and very active in the market at the moment. Anna-Marie Turley has joined us again from Enterprise Ireland. And Enterprise Ireland would be, consistently number 1 or 2 in terms of European equity investors, in terms of activity and overall quantum of investment that they put into startups. And we have Chris Burge, who is the founder and CEO of Spark Crowdfunding, who are a relatively new entrant into the crowdfunding market over the last number of years, but have gained huge traction and have become a really important part of the funding landscape, and bringing together the retail investors in Ireland. And so good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and really appreciate your time and your expertise, and as do the attendees, I'm sure. So Seamus, we might start with the whole world of angel investment. And again, I don't want to kind of make any assumption that attendees firstly even know what an angel investor is. So we might kind of start from that, and what actually is an angel investor. And maybe give us a bit of a background into yourself, the types of investments that you have done, and how the Boole investment syndicate works. So what an angel syndicate coming together and pooling resources to invest in companies, how all of that kind of works. You're just on mute there, Seamus.
An angel investor is basically someone who pays all their taxes, and after they get the leftover money, after the government takes it, they then invest in your company, hoping to make some more money. And it's important that people understand that, because people sometimes forget that angel investors are people who are looking for a return, and sometimes they're also looking for interest. So part of the reason I got involved in it is because it is interesting. You're meeting younger people, at least younger than me, who are starting off on the journey. I started off at 23, and it gives you that bit of a buzz, and you don't have to be stuck in it day in, day out, but you can get a part of the buzz, put in some money and hope for some money back. So that's the core essence of an angel investor. Sometimes they give advice, but not always. If you've got 20 investors in a company, not all 20 are going to have anything to contribute, but some will. So that's what an angel does. And it is important to understand that, so when they put in 20,000, it's 20,000, it costs them 40,000 to get that in general, before tax. Then in terms of how the types of investments we do, they range depending on the members' interests. So, if you have a syndicate that's kind of primarily consisting of people interested in the MedTech sector, then obviously they'll tend to focus on MedTech. Boole has been a more generic investment group. So we have invested in MedTech companies, in software companies, and food companies. But I suppose the core of it would be software and MedTech, are probably the two biggest ones for us. What happens is sometimes you're in the group, and if a couple of investments go wrong in one sector, you kind of get disillusioned with the sector. And not necessarily because of the sector, it's just because maybe the experience isn't in the group that you have to make that work. And how the whole works, we operate as a group, currently about 25 core investors. It kind of goes up and down a bit. And those people, we meet with a group of companies once every kind of 2 to 3 months, depending on the volume of people looking for investment. And at that, we get 4 presentations from the companies. They get 10 minutes each, followed by between 10, 15, maybe sometimes 20 minutes of a question and answer session. The core essence of that is, does it look like a reasonable idea? Do we understand what they're doing? Because we've had many occasions where people come in and we go, does anyone really get what they do? Sometimes the answer is no, we don't. Okay. And so that doesn't go much further. So it's really, and the team who are presenting is important as well. What they, are they people that you think you can invest in? Because it's not just the idea. The people are probably the most important, then the idea is secondary. And every investor will have a slightly different view. That's the general gist of it. And then what happens afterwards is we'll all go, well, is anyone interested? If so, how much? And if we have over the threshold amount, that threshold amount varies, we will then deem it worthwhile to have a follow-up call of about an hour, maybe 2 hours, depending on the project and level of interest. And that gets further information. And at that stage, we almost have a go, no go. I mean, it's reasonably quickly organized that way. And people would tend to have a number committed. Are you putting in 10, 20, 30, what? Many thousand at this stage. Mm-hmm. And then we go forward, and we might go back to the existing members and say, look, we're proceeding with this one. It's $250,000. These are roughly the terms. And is anyone else now interested after that? And then proceeds. We normally invest with other people. So either EI, obviously, but also other venture companies. And initially we thought we'd be competing with them, but we realized that, we don't. We actually co-invest with them. They get a bit of a benefit sometimes from us because we're in business, or at least have gone through that. Mm-hmm. And so that's their benefit, and our benefit is that sometimes we'll rely on their legals because they're probably better than that at us and more organized. And that's really it. Is that enough, Larry?
Yeah, I think that's painted a really good picture, Seamus. And I might come back to it in a while, just about the kind of number of investments and what kind of happens kind of post investment. But Chris, we might go to next there, because the retail investment is a really interesting piece, and the whole concept of crowdfunding and smaller or large numbers of small investments going into companies on a platform has really taken off, and is really beginning to become very impactful. And so you might, again, as Seamus has done there, just paint the picture for us as to what a retail investor is, and how you in Spark crowdfunding bring those retail investors to those opportunities.
Sure, absolutely. And hello to everybody. Thanks for having me along, Larry. So yeah, Spark crowdfunding's been around for 6 years now, and in that time we've done 48 campaigns, I think it is, ranging anything from 100,000 euros to 3 million is the biggest one that we've done. But like many of the people on the panel today, we're quite sector agnostic as well, and we'll go into any type of business as long as we think that it's going to be suitable for our investors. Excuse me. Our investors, yes, they're retail investors. They are like Seamus and angel investors, in so much that they are not a VC that is dedicated to a particular type of thing, who've got perhaps industry special knowledge. They are the average Joe punter on the street. Some of them are not very wealthy and put in very, very modest amounts, 100, 200, 300, 400 euros. Some of them are very, very wealthy and wouldn't blink an eye at putting 100,000 into an investment as well. And we have a whole plethora of people who do that, and we've now got over 12,000 investors on our database, as I say, from the very small to the very large. And in fact, just like Seamus, we even have small syndicates within that who will invest on bulk as well. So they will talk together. They say, yes, I like that one, and they will come in with a chunk of investment through our platform too. So that's what we do. That's how we do it. We are, as I say, have done a number of campaigns now of all different shapes and sizes, and allow that retail investor to come in. The actual process is really, really quick as well. So we've raised large amounts of money in very, very tight periods of time. I mean, we raised $1.5 million for a very good Galway MedTech company last year in just 6 weeks. So we raised, in fact, the actual raise was even shorter than that. It was only in 3 weeks. So we had an engagement. We prepared all of their collateral that goes onto the platform. The platform was open for 3 weeks, and we closed the deal with all of the legals wrapped up and done and dusted in 1 week. Very, very tight, and it took a lot of hours outside of normal working hours to do that, but you can see how quick it can be. But a normal campaign from start to finish, so from first engagement to money in the bank, can take as 8, 10, maybe 12 weeks, and that's very, very normal. So speed, a great number of people that come into it, but all wrapped together into a nominee company. So there's only one line on your cap table, which is very important for follow-on investment, and that's how we do it. But we also have worked not only with the syndicates as well and our group of investors, but we also co-invest alongside many VCs as well, and have done so on a number of occasions now. One of which was with Delta Partners, but many of the others that Sarah Jane showed on her list there as well. So that's Spark crowdfunding in a nutshell, and I'll have some more questions later on, perhaps, Larry.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, great. And congratulations on that. And it's been a great addition, I think, and has supported a number of startups, and great to see the growth of the network and the power of those numbers. And lots of small investments and some large investments making big numbers and really kind of impacting these companies. So, Amy, we might move on to VC and Delta VC now, and just in the context of private angel investors, retail investors, and then moving on to VC. Just paint the picture of how that's different and where your funds effectively come from.
Sure. Thanks, Ari. Thanks so much for having me today. And hi, everybody. I am a partner with Delta Partners. We are an Irish venture capital firm. We've been in the market here for the past 30 years. So seen an awful lot as it relates to the Irish venture capital landscape that Sarah Jane painted a picture of earlier in the session. Over that time, we've invested in 140 companies and seen returns to the level of about 1.8 billion. So seen an awful lot in the market. And Larry, to your question, how does the whole VC thing work? So venture capital is a very particular asset class from an investing point of view. If you think about investors placing their money across a whole host of different assets, from public markets to other types of alternative investment, venture capital is sort of the risky end of the scale, where investors are investing for very high potential returns that will beat all other asset classes over a much longer period of time. So a venture capital firm will go out and raise money from investors, a huge potential spread of investors, from blue chip institutional investors like pension funds, through to endowment funds, through to sovereign funds, all the way through to family offices and potentially high net worth individuals who've maybe made their money as entrepreneurs. There's a whole host of types of investor that will invest into a venture capital fund as what's called a limited partner of that fund. And then the venture capital firm is taking those commitments to a fund and placing that capital into individual companies in the hope of making really, really fantastic longer term returns for their investors. So unlike Seamus and his colleagues who are investing their own money in a venture capital firm, you're investing other people's money, which means that our processes can often be a lot longer and perhaps a lot more intense than maybe working with an angel investor. But Seamus is absolutely right. We work really, really well together. Angel investors and venture capital investors, particularly in the Irish market, work really, really well together and bring different types of value to the companies that we invest in. So a venture capital fund will raise its fund and then start deploying. For the first sort of 3, 4, maybe 5 years of a fund life cycle is when we are making bets, when we're placing money into companies. And our job in that period of time is to ensure that we see everything that's happening from a market point of view and choosing wisely the types of companies that we want to put capital into. And the reason that we would put capital into those companies is because we expect them to potentially deliver outsized returns over a number of years. So our expectation is that we're putting our money in, locking it away, and that we might see exits from those companies in, say, 7, 8, 9, 10, sometimes longer periods of time. So our job is to find those fantastic deals, execute them really, really well. So make sure that we are pricing deals well, make sure that we are putting governance in place around those companies really, really well, and then working with those teams through the lifespan of building their company. So that's effectively how it works. There are lots of different types of venture capital firm. They vary on the basis of stage. So Delta Partners is an early stage investor. We do pre-seed, seed, and potentially some Series A. But there are venture capital firms that would call themselves growth firms, growth funds that go much later with much larger checks. Venture capital firms can be differentiate themselves on the basis of the sectors that they're going after. So you'll hear firms talk about being generalist or specialist. And you may see firms that are just focused on one sector, and that's often down to the specialities of the teams within those firms. And then they might differentiate themselves in terms of the value that they can bring to the companies that they invest in. But from the point of view of startups on the call that are thinking about venture capital investing, I guess it's important to know that when you're approaching a firm or being approached by a firm, there's a whole different flavor, and it's really, really important that you ask the questions to understand who the firm is that you're talking to and what their motivations are and what their thesis is around their investment. So maybe that's enough to start off, Larry, but happy to dive in further.
Perfect. No, that was brilliant. It's a really, really great synopsis of VC. I mean, thank you so much. So Anna Marie, I might come to you next there. So we've heard from Chris and Seamus and Amy, and very often founders or startup companies then come to EI with some investment from one or all, and they come to EI and say, look, we've raised X amount, we think we're an interesting company. And EI takes a view on whether they invest or don't invest alongside those. So you might tell us a little bit more, just building on some of the messages from earlier on, around how EI invests in those companies then.
Yeah, thanks. So I suppose briefly, Enterprise Ireland, we're supported by the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. And for startups in particular, I suppose we have three main pathways of support that I would have mentioned earlier. The feasibility, the HPSU feasibility, the pre-seed start fund, and the full-blown innovative high potential startup funding. So I suppose if you look at, our remit, what are we looking for in companies that we're investing in? We are looking for those companies to provide jobs based in Ireland, and we are looking for them to be focused on exports. So given a flavour, I guess, of, companies that we would have invested in, we had our annual startup day last week, and that was kind of celebrating the number of startups that we had invested in over 2023. So numbers wise, that worked out at 24 million of investment over 2023 in 156 startups. So if you look at what way they were broken down, that was 85 high potential startups, which are the ones that are a little bit further down the line. Typically, they've got that traction, they've got their minimal viable product. They're beginning to get payment from customers, generate revenue, all of those good things. And in terms of, I suppose, the breakdown, Amy mentioned sectors. We are a little bit sector agnostic in terms of, the breakdown of those companies that we would have supported, mostly in the technology side. No surprise there. There would have been about 80 of those that we would have supported. Life sciences coming strong on that, 20, fintech, food, small but strong sector in food as well, and great to see the emphasis on sustainability coming through as well. I suppose looking at it in terms of, PitchBook would recognise Enterprise Ireland as being the leading domestic VC, that we've been recognised as number one throughout Europe by deal flow for the past number of years. If you look at it in terms of what are we looking for, again, we're never going to be the lead investor. We're always a co-investor. That's why it's really great, like that Chris and Seamus and Amy all referenced, coming in with Enterprise Ireland. So we don't lead out on that. We'd like to see somebody else coming in, because remember, our funding is coming from the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. It's taxpayers' money. What are we looking for? We're not necessarily looking for the great return. We are in the risk business. We're looking for sustainable and secure jobs and those exports. So that's primarily our focus. In terms of instruments, we will follow leads investors, but more and more we're moving towards the convertible loan note. And that is an easier mechanism, I suppose, for entrepreneurs at the starting stages, particularly at pre-seed, because it avoids the whole issue of putting valuations on companies. So that is a really strong mechanism of support for investors. And more we're going down the route of the convertible loan note as our investment mechanism going forward. The other thing, I suppose, just to say from our own perspective in terms of due diligence, we're looking to see how much the business actually needs in terms of overall funding. So, and where and who the other investors are. Seamus mentioned earlier the importance of team, vitally important. The importance of who they are attracting, what market research has been done, again, vitally important. But we're also looking at that regional balance. And again, just going back to our stats from last week, over 55% of the investments that we made were outside Dublin. So that's great to see from our side. So hopefully that gives a flavour of what we're doing.
It does, absolutely, and again, a huge contribution to the overall funding landscape. And I know in our region, we are consistently 30 to 40% of all HPSU seed rounds, and the same continued for last year. So Sarah, we might just come back to yourself again there, and it's like the resilience in that early stage, kind of pre 5 million, even in last year, was kind of interesting. And I think, you know, at the tail end of last year, maybe there wasn't as much optimism about 2024, and it's kind of nice to hear that that hasn't followed through, or the initial kind of signs are in the data is pointing to that. So what's behind that, do you think? How has that kind of managed to stay as resilient as it has? So what's behind the data there, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think partly it's all the people on on this call who've just been speaking, and you know, the range of options that are available for companies, from crowdfunding through investment and early stage VC in the seed space, the Enterprise Ireland support, the support of the LEOs, that stack of options that are available for early stage companies to get them through, you know, maybe the first 18 to 24 months is extremely strong in Ireland. And the range and depth of investors who are there, you know, I guess one of the things we would often say is, you know, Ireland's economic history is a little bit different to some of our neighbours. You know, our prosperity is largely recently generated. You know, we were probably pretty agrarian until, you know, maybe the FDI boom in the 70s and 80s. And then in the last number of years, we've had a lot more successful indigenous companies and people achieving exits. And I think one of the things that we would observe is that we are starting to build more of an equity culture. And because some of that wealth in Ireland is much more recent, you know, if you look at the UK, for example, often in the UK, wealth was generated a number of generations ago, and there's a lot of focus on preserving it and low risk investments. Whereas in Ireland, because it's much more recent, we're probably more willing to take risks with certain portions of it. And I think that's probably a factor that's really starting to drive an equity culture here at early stages.
That's really interesting. Actually, I hadn't kind of thought of it in that context before. So thanks for that, Sarah. And Seamus, I might just come to you there again, kind of briefly. Like the Boole Syndicate, like I've obviously got a lot of kind of inside information into the Boole Syndicate because we work very closely together. Has been around for about 12 years, and I know that recently it's gone through a kind of a professionalization and a bit of a transformation around that. What's the, you know, with a maturing syndicate, what's the plan for the future with the Boole, and where do you see things kind of going? You're on mute there again, Seamus.
The key thing with the future there is I suppose it's just moving from, we were very loosely connected up until relatively recently. So there was no structure formal to it. We survived working together as a group with no formal structure. Now that was good in one way because, you know, so we were putting our money into companies directly with no costs involved. Okay. So there are costs with any other structure. Okay. And up until recently, we had no cost. Now we have a membership structure where we have a fee, we have a paid CEO. And so there are some costs going out, but it's still very light. And money, all the money we put in goes into the company directly with very little cost removed. And that's just, but it's more hands-on. So the investors coming through our group are more hands-on in that sense. You know, I'm involved in a VC fund as well, so I've committed money to that I you know, it's committed. So if someday someone will say we're investing in this, and they'll ask me for 20,000 to throw into it, and I'll go, there you go. And I will be involved in it a bit in this particular VC fund, but most of the times in VC funds you'll be disconnected from the investment process more so. Now I have also invested, by the way, with both Delta and Spark. So, you know, sometimes actually on my own, which I normally don't do much, but I got to know the Delta people pretty well. I got working with them in a couple of projects where we had invested with Boole. And then when they were saying, okay, there's a shortage here for this company, would you be interested? And I go, okay, yeah. And so you get involved in deals, because partly sometimes the issue is getting exposure to deals. It's your time to get exposure and the work needed to do it. So dealing with Spark and with the VCs, you can be very hands off. largely. Whereas if you're doing angel investing, you're a lot more hands-on, and that needs time. But some people like that. You know, I like the getting involved, the getting to know the companies, etc., etc. That brings a bit of a buzz. But sometimes people just want to go, I want to put $1 million into this type of asset class. Good luck with it, and I don't want to hear from you again until you give me back my money with some profits.
Yeah. Very good, very good. Thanks, Seamus, for that. And Chris, I just come to you again there. Like I was on one of your calls at the start of this week. There's two very interesting companies, and a big element of the apart from the product and attraction they had made was the fact that these companies were EIS eligible. And that's particularly of interest to kind of retail investors who often come from a PAYE background. Can you just give us a bit of an understanding of what EIS does and where the benefits accrue there?
Yeah, EIS is a tax incentive that's been put together by the Irish government and the Department of Finance to stimulate early investment into early stage businesses by retail investors, by just the average Joe soap on the street, and you can get a very nice tax benefit from that, up to 50% now since the change came in the budget last year. So if a company is pre-revenue and pre-revenue, then you can get up to 50% rebate on your investment. So if you put €1,000 in, then it's actually only costing you €500, which is a very nice incentive. That rate falls down a little bit when they go into revenue, and then when they do a subsequent round in EIS, it goes down to 35% and then down to 20%. But nevertheless, it's still a nice incentive, whichever level it's at, and that is a kind of quite an important element for many of the retail investors. They do want to avail of that, and we facilitate that for most of our companies that are on the platform. Not everybody has EIS, but certainly many of them do. Yes, it's a really nice way of getting rid of some of your tax burden, even as a PAY employee. Yes, it's a nice incentive.
Excellent, Chris. Thanks for that. It's an important instrument in Ireland, and anything that kind of incentivizes early stage investment, and especially through tax breaks like that, I think is going to get a lot of attention, right? Amy, we might just finish up. We're just kind of conscious of time a small bit here. We might just finish up with yourself. And you mentioned there an investment thesis and the investment thesis of Delta Partners. So can you explain what that investment thesis is currently and what it looks like for the rest of 2024?
Yeah, so from our point of view, our investment thesis is to focus on early stage companies in the Irish market. So for us, that means that our deals are pre-seed or seed deals. We're often the very first institutional investor going into an early stage company. That company may have already taken on some angel funding. In fact, in the majority of cases, it probably has taken on some angel funding. And then when we structure a deal, we'll probably be investing alongside other angels and maybe another institutional investor alongside ourselves. In terms of our thesis, our preference is to lead deals. So we're typically taking that lead position, which means that we're setting the terms and taking responsibility for the legals and the negotiations of the deal, and then working really, really closely with the company. Now, from our point of view, we have chosen to be sector agnostic. So we think that if we are doing early stage investing in the Irish market, that gives us enough of a thesis. And therefore, because the Irish market is relatively small compared to maybe some of the other major European markets, that we need to be a generalist investor. So we will look at companies that are across all sectors, with all types of technology. Others in the market are sort of going maybe early and growth, and therefore they're taking a particular lens on a particular sector or segment. But we've decided that we won't do that. The other thing I suppose to talk about in relation to Delta is that we call ourselves what we've coined the phrase, we're a partner-led firm. So we're a small team of people who have had a good bit of experience. And that means that the partners in the firm are both sourcing the deals, executing those deals, and then working with the companies all the way through the journey. You'll see that other firms maybe have a different model where they've split the team up to be part of the team focused on sourcing the deals, another part of the team executing the deals, and then another part of the team working operationally with the companies. So yeah, that's sort of how we're thinking about it. We are 2 years into this fund, which means that we've got a good number of deals under our belt, but we're still very, very active. Really interesting to hear Sarah Jane's points on the market more generally, which reflects what we're seeing. Things were a lot quieter maybe 12 months ago, but 2024 is proving to be a really exciting year with the pace really picking up in terms of companies that we're seeing that are looking for investment, and then deals that we're getting done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we'd definitely within Ireland and within our region, especially, we're seeing that in 23, late 23, and definitely the pipeline is looking very interesting for 24. So look, really appreciate that, folks. Unfortunately, again, we could have chatted on for another bit of time, for sure, but it's been an interesting conversation. Thank you, Seamus, Sarah Jane, for your presentation, as well for Amy, Anna Marie for your continued support, and Chris as well. And it's just brilliant to chat to you and to know that the investment that your organizations are putting in is having a huge impact on an early stage. Okay, thank you very much, folks. I'm going to just good guys. Just going to hand over to my colleague Declan Fox, who's doing a lot of work for us at the moment around third level and engaging with third level organizations across the region. So I think there's an interesting discussion going to be had here around research. And Declan, I'll hand over to yourself.
Okay, many thanks, Larry, for the kind introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Declan Fox, and I'm very happy to be involved in this market discovery workshop and the US Seeds of Bravery Project. So thanks again for that. Again, I'm a senior consultant with AxisBIC, and I have a long-standing working relationship with AxisBIC for almost 25 years. It goes back as far as 1999, when I did my first startup and availed of all the great supports which are mentioned here today. And I'm glad to see so much available today as well. So it's great to go the full circle. I'm very happy to present this section of the workshop, illustrating the deep relationship that exists between the third level research performing organizations and the entrepreneurial community within Ireland. Again, AxisBIC is instrumental in our region in assisting technology spin-out companies from the universities. We assist by getting involved early in the process and working with the researchers to help create startups that can scale internationally. Again, as mentioned earlier, back in 2023, EI Enterprise Ireland has supported 26 spin-out companies from the research performing organizations. 16 of these avail of the financial support from the EI Research Commercialization Programme, and in total 12 high-performance startup companies were supported and registered. And this is indeed, it's a great result for all involved, so well done to everybody. Today, we're going to focus on what supports are available for technology spin-out and spin-in companies at the research performing organizations. And I'm very happy, and we're very fortunate to be joined by industry leaders within this ecosystem. The forum today includes an introductory keynote from Mr. Christian Stafford, Head of Knowledge Transfer Ireland, KTI, followed by a panel discussion led by 3 key professionals leading the charge in spinning out our technology from the universities across Ireland. Christian has a wealth of knowledge and understanding of the research-led spin-out process and the funding mechanisms available within Knowledge Transfer Ireland and the research performing organisations. The panel, it consists of Mr. Neil Gordon, he's the Startup Development Manager at Trinity College in Dublin, Ms. Gerta O'Rourke, Head of New Ventures at the Nexus Innovation Centre in University College Limerick, and Mr. Dahi Power, and Dahi would be the Commercialisation Specialist at Enterprise Ireland, who is very active in the Tyndall National Institute, which is part of University College Cork. Neil, Gert and Dahi all have years of experience working with multiple technologies and many, many researchers. greatly assisting them to create the spin-out companies making a difference globally, and be there at the different sectors, including ICT, cybersecurity, health and life sciences, energy, envirotech, agri-food, and fintech, etc. So at this stage, I'd like to ask each of our 4 participants to give a very, very brief introduction of themselves and their organization. So I might start with you, Christian, if you're free, please.
Okay, thanks, Declan. Thanks for the invitation to participate in the workshop today. Delighted to be here on behalf of KTI. So yeah, as Declan said, I'm the head of Knowledge Transfer Ireland. So for our audience joining us as part of the workshop this morning, that is an organization that is basically the interface between the research system, third level research system, and industry. So it acts as a bridge really between academic research and industry to try and get ideas and people and technology flowing from both sides. So I look after that group. We're hosted within Enterprise Ireland, and so our agenda is very much on kind of looking to deploy innovation for economic growth. So delighted to be here this morning and just to talk about aspects of the research and innovation ecosystem and how it relates to the startup agenda.
Okay, that's perfect. Thanks very much, Christian. Neil, are you free there? You're up next.
I am. Listen, good afternoon, and thanks very much for the invitation, Declan. I'm Neil Gordon. I'm the Startup Development Manager at Trinity College in Dublin. So my job is to work with Trinity's researchers and staff to try and help them translate and spin out all the research work that's being carried out. Trinity is a very interesting place. It's a very old university. It was founded in 1592 by Queen Elizabeth I from Britain. And so there's a strong history there and a strong tradition. But being an old university, there's still a lot of opportunity for new technology to actually come out of it. We ranked 98th in the world QS rankings. And I suppose just to give you a kind of sense of the scale, we spin out typically about 5 to 6 companies per year. So over the last 7 years, we have spun out 32 companies. And out of those 32 companies, 22 have converted into HPSU. Between them, they've raised about 320 million euros, and they've created 800 jobs. And out of those 32 companies, 9 are female-led as well. I think the other thing that I should add is that, there's not many jobs in this world where in the morning you could be talking to somebody who's got a new treatment for inflammatory disease. And in the afternoon, you could be talking to somebody who's got a new robot technology. Yeah. And later on the day, you've got an AI platform. So it's an interesting place to be. It's an interesting place to work. And there's lots of opportunity for anybody who wants to engage with us.
Okay, impressive results there. Thanks, Neil. Gert, I'll move on to you. And your camera is currently turned off, Gert. And hi.
I can't turn it on. It's blocked by the host.
What we might do, oh yeah, there you go.
Great.
Perfect, Gert, we have you. Very good.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so my name is Gert O'Rourke and I am from the University of Limerick. The complete opposite of Neil and Trinity. We're a young university. We're just after celebrating 50 years of inception. So, and we have scaled from moving from a kind of an early stage institute of higher education into a university status. So the University of Limerick is based in the Midwest. We're based in Limerick. We have 4 faculties. We've got Science and Engineering, Arts and Humanities. We've got the Kenny Business School. And we also have Education, Health and Sciences with a number of research centres and national centres. The sectoral focus in the region and UL's focus is probably in the area of software, engineering, manufacturing, pharma, MedTech and technology. I am a new role within the university. I'm supporting new ventures. And what I'm doing basically is working with researchers on the one hand to try and encourage them to create a business from their research and think about spinning out and commercializing the opportunity that they have within the research. And then on the other hand, supporting startup companies. For startup companies, we have an innovation centre on campus called the Nexus Innovation Centre, where we support up to 18 HPSU companies. not sector we're sector agnostic, because of the size of the region and because of the limit in terms of the companies that we can support. But we're always keen to work with new and emerging and innovative companies who have the potential to scale and grow internally within UL and then externally within the region with our partners.
Okay, that's very good. It's great to get representation from the west of Ireland. So the objective today was to get a spread of talent such as Neil, Gert and Ty, which will be from Dublin, the west and also the south. So we get a feel for what's happening internationally. Dahi, can I move on to you, please, for an introduction?
Sure. Thanks very much, Declan. So I'm with Enterprise Ireland. Enterprise Ireland has a number of arms. We support.
Dahi, we lost your connection.
Our focus is primarily helping research in third level that can go on to either create startup companies or create licenses out in industry. We have a number of mechanisms which we do to achieve that. We provide funding for research. We also have a number of source supports to help businesses get off the ground. And my role is working with the TTOs in the universities, tech transfer people, to find these projects that have value and look like they have prospect to create spin-outs, work with them to get them funded, to provide the source supports around that to enable them to do their market research, and then connecting with investors at the end, all the way on the journey to achieving a spin-out. So but a lot of us see us as just a funding agency, someone who writes a check to support funding, but we try to do a lot more than that. We try to support people along the journey the whole way.
Yeah, it's great to see, Dahi, and thank you. The collaboration between Enterprise Ireland and the universities in the region, so that's fantastic to get that overview. Right, so moving on now, we might move to Christian. And Christian's going to give us a keynote highlighting the synergies between the research performing organisations in Ireland and the commercial supports available to them to create the technology-led spin-out companies of the future. And Christian promised he'd try and keep it to 10 minutes. So we'll hand over to Christian for his overview. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Declan. I'll just share my screen. Just give me a shout that that's working, okay?
Okay, if you go full screen mode and...
I'll try and get slideshow going here if I can. Okay. Can you see that, Declan?
Yeah, that's yeah, that's it. You have it.
Okay, great. And hopefully our audience can see that as well. And these slides can be made available certainly to the audience
Perfect,
under the workshop. So thanks, Declan, for the introduction. I suppose I just wanted to kind of just paint a picture, I suppose, for the kind of startup ecosystem, and then specifically how the research and innovation ecosystem within Ireland kind of feeds into the startup agenda. That's really the kind of two main things I kind of want to cover today. From the perspective of Knowledge Transfer Ireland, which I said earlier on, is the kind of this bridge really between the research system and industry. Just for context, I suppose, KTI operates within EI, and EI is an economic development agency focused on Indigenous company development. So we have a sister agency, the IDA, focused on multinational foreign direct investment. But EI is very much focused on the Indigenous SME base and developing that as the driver of economic prosperity within Ireland. So we have investment arms in company and into research, as Dahi touched on, and then lots of other supports around capability development and market access. And I know Anne-Maria touched on some of these kind of overviews in terms of EI's role earlier on in the day, so I won't replicate some of that. So just a word on KTI, maybe before I get into the meat of the presentation. So we sit at the interface really between kind of the research system, which is universities, technological universities, research centres and academic researchers, and business investors and entrepreneurs, and then also other government agencies and government stakeholders. So it's really, in many ways, it's just about maximising the impact from innovation investment from the system through collaboration, through getting research talent in industry, through licensing of IP and technology, and most importantly of all, through creating IP-led deep tech startups that are spinning out from the research system. So I suppose the context on which the kind of spin-out agenda sits is that EI really has been building up the ecosystem here for over 20 years. So we're a funder of funds going back to the mid-2000s. So that's where the government through EI has put money up to create investment funds that can leverage and attract other capital to the table, and that's been running since the mid-2000s, for over nearly 4,000 investment rounds through 71 VC funds. And then EI also invests directly in high growth startups. And again, I know Anna Marie has touched on some of that earlier on, so I won't go over that ground again. But as I say, we're a funder of funds, and we fund directly. And I'll come back to the fund directly piece in the context of spin-outs as well, because there's a particular bit of armory that we have within the Irish system that allows us to kind of de-risk deep tech spin-outs coming out of university as well, through our commercialization fund. Ireland and I suppose is being recognised by PitchBook as the #1 VC in Europe by deal count. So again, it's just for the audience, just to give you a sense that it's a very dynamic kind of startup ecosystem here. Has been for a number of years, and a really good environment for creating high growth startups. We work across lots of different sectors, very diverse mix from fintech to food to life sciences, industrial. And also, there's a big regional focus. I'm working with our colleagues like in AxisBIC and other regional offices. So more than 50% of the startups that we fund in a year are actually outside the Dublin urban area. So there's that regional diversity of startups. And that relates to spin-outs as well. So the spin-outs is a real driver of kind of regional impact as well, because they are coming out of the universities that are spread across the country. There's also a big emphasis in recent years on getting more women founders to the table, and we're very successful in that. And also looking at mobile international entrepreneurs who are relocating to Ireland to avail the startup ecosystem here and set up their business within Ireland, as long as they're eligible to do so. So look, from that kind of high level kind of context, just to set the scene then on kind of what the research innovation system is doing. And within EI, I think Dahi mentioned this. So as an economic development agency, we are somewhat unusual in that we also have a very significant budget for investment in the research and innovation ecosystem. So there's funding and soft supports for industry, but then there's also funding that we deploy into the academic research system through the universities, technological universities, and institutes of technology. So a couple of these to talk about, because these really, I suppose, are the baseline and the engine that kind of throwing out groundbreaking technology and IP that leads us way into spin-out companies from the research base. So we invest in over 25 research centers, so in different sectors. Some very large scale in sectors where industry has come together to identify specific needs and gaps in the market, and we fund research to kind of meet those industry needs. We also play a role in leveraging funding from Horizon Europe. So Ireland has been very successful in kind of winning money from Horizon Europe. So at the end of 2023, over 600 million has been won on Horizon Europe. And just to flag within that, 129 million of approvals under EIC. And that's really interesting, because what we see is EIC coming in both as grant, and there's an equity piece to that, is additional funding to bring to the table for startups. So a lot of the spin-outs from academia, from research and universities, have actually been particularly successful in winning EIC funding. And that's providing a lot of additional funding. So some of it's dilutive, but some of it's non-dilutive, to really de-risk, develop technology and get it into the market. The third leg here, which is interesting in an Irish context, is the government created a disruptive technology innovation fund a couple of years ago. And this was €500 million that consortia and industry can pitch into, really to fund the development of new groundbreaking technologies. And again, these are also, we're getting to see the kind of the outturn of that in terms of new technology coming to the market, joint ventures and startups coming out of that fund. So again, it's just putting risk funding into the research system in collaboration with industry to again drive new spin-outs coming out of the system. And then on the commercialization side, which I'll talk about in a minute, where we have kind of pre-seed funds that can go into technology and IP that's coming out of universities to again bring it near the market de-risk the technology somewhat before private investment can come to the table. So, and then the last piece, which I'll just highlight, which is something kind of very unique in the Irish system, is we have a needs-led innovation program. The flagship that is called Buy Innovate. And really, this is a model where we are creating a cohort of about a dozen innovation fellows every year. So Buy Innovate is a MedTech program, so they do a deep immersion in kind of clinical environment to identify pain points, and that's married then with an innovation process to find solutions to those clinical needs, and creating entrepreneurial teams that are in spinning these technologies out of the universities, wrapping the commercialization fund, pre-seed funding around that, and then spinning out into the market. And just to flag that that's been so successful in terms of adding new kind of pipeline of high potential startups into the system, that we're kind of scaling that approach into other sectors, and one in cybersecurity in Munster Technology University in Cork, one in digital health in Dundalk Institute of Technology, and one in AgTech in Teagasc, which is a state agri-food development agency, and UCD. So they're ones to watch in the coming years. So as I said earlier on, kind of KTI is a kind of bridge between a lot of the stakeholders in academia, business, and government to maximize the impact of innovation investment for industry. So this is kind of a motif that I use a lot when I'm talking about KTI. It's to be that interface between all the parties, make sure all the stakeholders are aligned to maximize impact. And why that's important, I suppose, is that within an Irish context, and I think this was touched on maybe, I just called in the last panel. In the last kind of 20 plus years or so, the government, in terms of government policy, has really put a lot of investment into shifting the country towards a more knowledge-based economy. So it was very agrarian industry, very tourist-based, and then we had multinationals in terms of manufacturing coming in the kind of 70s and early 80s. But then around the late 90s and 2000s, that was a major shift in terms of investing in significant kind of research, technology, innovation through a number of national policies, which kind of guided the investment, but then also looked to build in infrastructure that would allow the outputs of all that research to be commercialized. So I mean, I'm not going to bore you with all the history here, but this is a kind of timeline, I suppose, of innovation policy. With a number of major strategies throughout from 2006, the first one, 2015, Innovation 2020, and the current one we're working under is Impact 2030. But I suppose the take-home message from that is the real high-level impact that these policies and strategies are looking to achieve is actually driving really deep tech, high-quality spin-outs from the research system. So that's what all of this kind of effort and resources is really deployed into. And as part of that, it's not just about investing in research, but also investing in the technology transfer systems. That really allows the IP, allows technology to try and get into the market. So this is just a snapshot of the kind of the outturn from the knowledge transfer system. These are 2022 figures. We're currently validating 2023 figures. But really just to highlight here, so the top left-hand figure there, 746 million, that's the amount of research spend in the university system in 2022. And that turned out 24 spin-outs that year. Over 2,000 collaborative research agreements with industry, nearly 200 license agreements from coming out from academia to industry. So I say a dynamic and kind of busy system. KTI also, as part of the agenda, is a kind of portal to showcase IP and technology to industry. So it'd be a source of expertise or a source of IP and licenses. We also have put in frameworks in place around particularly the National IP Protocol, which is, I suppose, really to set a transparent and consistent framework for how technology can be commercialized and how spin-outs can be created in particular. And so just my last couple of slides was just to touch on like what has that kind of achieved to date. So on average, looking at the last kind of 5 years or so, we're probably hitting around the kind of high 20s in terms of number of spin-outs that are coming out of the Irish system on an annual basis. And just how that compares to some other systems internationally. So if you look at something like Emory University, which is very similar research spend, they have about 5 spin-outs in 2022. So we have 24. Cambridge, again, a little bit less number of research spend, they also got 5. So I think, look, very simple benchmarking, but we're doing kind of quite well in terms of getting that outturn. But maybe one thing is around getting the quality up. So we really want to get those spin outs operating at a very kind of high quality level. And to that end, we have this specific kind of pre-seed fund called Commercialization Fund, which is around investing in IP within a university, I say, to bring it further on the commercial journey, de-risk it, and put a team around it that it can spin out and become a high growth startup. So we've had in 2023, 26 spinouts, and about half of those are what we call, from an EI perspective, and this was touched on by Anna Marie, kind of high potential startups, the real potential to going to grow and scale internationally. We're looking to build on that further, and I say happy to take questions, happy to join the panel discussion, and we'll share the slides after as well for the audience. So Declan, probably a little bit over time there, apologies, but
very good.
Leave it there, and I say happy to engage in the panel discussion.
Okay, thank you, Christian. That was most comprehensive, and above all, it was very insightful, and it demonstrated the commitment within Ireland from a government level, from a top level down, supporting the entrepreneurial spirit and activity within the research organisations to create, as you said, really high quality spin-outs. So it's great to see that happening. Okay, now moving on then to our panel. Okay, I have 3 questions, guys, to the panel, and I'd really welcome your insights. So there's 3 questions, and I'll ask each question of 2 of you, so that it'll be 6 responses. So we'll work through that. So, and then after that, I'll ask Christian to come back to with final thoughts, and we close it out then. So number 1 question I'd like to put to the panel for your valued opinion is, a key part of the spin-out process for researchers and commercialization experts is access to accelerators and incubators to build out the product and to garner early market validation. So can you please tell me how you approach this validation stage of the process, and anything that you find and you do differently to enable success? And we might open this up with Gert, if you're available there, Gert.
Yes, thanks, Declan. Interesting.
1 second, Gert. You might up the volume a small bit there, Gert.
Can you hear me? Is that better?
A bit, yeah.
A bit better.
Thank you.
I'll speak a bit louder. That might help.
That's good. Thank you.
Interestingly, I was at my daughter's graduation last night from second level.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the principal of the secondary school gave a speech to all of the attendees. And he talked about how the students had their future within their own grasp. And he said, I'm going to tell you 10 words made up of 2 letters. And those words were, if it is to be, it is up to me. And I think that really summed up what we in universities and in accelerators are looking for. We are looking for founders who want to be and will drive the being of the startup by being a good founder. And ultimately, that's what we're looking for within startups, is a good founding team with good promoters behind us. Similarly to VCs, we're always looking to find, good promoters. And we always find that if the company maybe is not 100% perfect at the early stages, if you've got a good team around it, then it's easier to support that team in terms of scaling and growing. So what we try and do in innovation centers is really wrap our arms around that team. Linkage and network is so important. Sometimes it's what you know is important, but it's also who you know and where you know that can support that. So incubators and accelerators provide that network. They provide that collaboration opportunity, but they also provide peer networking, so that in an incubator, you get a chance to work with 18, 20, 30 other people who are sector agnostic. They're not in the same industry sector as you perhaps, but they're at a similar scale. And we try to put those soft supports around the companies to help them to scale and grow. We don't take equity. We don't have any direct input into the company themselves. Our job is to be external, supporting, connecting, mentoring, and being the independent sounding board, and sometimes playing devil's advocate as well, and asking, is it an ugly baby that you're trying to rear? And if so, what can we do to make it prettier?
Yeah. Okay, very good. That's very insightful. Thank that, Gert. And I might pose the same question to Dahi. I know you're working a lot with the incubators and the accelerators and inside in the Tyndall National Institute and UCC. So maybe you might provide us some insights there, what you feel works best from the mix of prospects that you're working with.
In the last 10 years, we've seen nearly every major college now has an incubator of some. They've been key as somewhere where people can go to be with people of similar mindset and develop synergies. Some colleges have ones that are very kind of specific to technology areas, like in the Tyndall now, as you mentioned. Now they do an awful lot with in the photonics area and in semiconductors, and others more general, but they're and they tie in with other programs that Enterprise Ireland funds as well, such as New Frontiers, where we get people just the initial skills that you need to start up a business and putting people in the right environment. So people come in with enthusiasm, with ideas, and just putting into that environment where they can grow their idea, where they become aware as well of all the other funding mechanisms, such as the ones Christian mentioned there. They might go on to kind of spin in with a researcher in the university then and get commercialization funding to develop their idea to spin out. But these incubators, they're key fertile grounds where people can build on their idea, bounce it off people, and talk to people who've been through that journey before, their skills that they're going to need to spin it out as business.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's great to see so much synergies happening across all the universities and helping and assistance early on. So thanks for that, Dahi. So moving on to the next question. Neil, you're first up, if you're okay with that. We all have an understanding of the technology spin-out options and the supports available to them. And given the context of this workshop, can you please give some insights on the opportunity for spin-ins of technology or high-end expertise from abroad to your college, and what supports might be available to them?
Yeah, fair question. I suppose what's interesting from our perspective is that, we believe that to create high quality spin-outs, you need three things. You need world-class research, you need great team, and you need access to early stage finance. So you need to create an environment where all those three things are happening. One of the things that's actually very challenging for researchers is, they're fantastic at creating new technology and they're fantastic at creating new innovations, but the question is, how do you take it to a point where you can get it into the market, where you can sell it, and you can make an impact? So one of the things that we found over the last number of years is that spin-ins is a way to actually get high quality commercial leads and people with the commercial experience and market knowledge into the university environment. The challenge is actually, how do you match a researcher off with the person who wants to spin in as an idea? So for example, if there's any of the audience here today who've got an idea, but they're not sure exactly how do I actually go about taking it to the next stage, what I would suggest is come and talk to any of the universities here, come and talk to me, come and talk to Garrett, come and talk to anybody in the university. And what we'll do is we'll see if we can get a researcher that's aligned with what you want to try to achieve. Then we can go, as Christian talked about, the COM funds. We can look at environments where we can spin in the technology. We just make sure that we understand where the IP situation is, the background IP, the foreground IP that's being created, and then we treat it like any normal spin out. And the final thing I'd like to say is that we've had a lot of success with medical devices in terms of spin-ins. We've had a lot of success with AI in terms of spin-ins, and we want that to continue as well.
That's great. Now, I think there's a big opportunity for all the universities and for the creation of HPSUs in general as time moves on to get spin-ins, whether that's expertise or a person or technology. I think everything's up for discussion. I might put the question to yourself, Gert. What's your view from the University of Limerick perspective and Nexus on the spin-ins?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of startups in the Nexus Innovation Centres that can be deemed as spin-ins, and we actually use the resource of startups, people who have done it, and many of them are serial startups in the region. So we've either got spin-outs who have done it a couple of times, or people in the startup environment who have done it a couple of times. And we use these people to try and encourage others to do it, and to try and support others in the doing of that. So there's a lot of programs that we're pulling together to try and encourage that spin in. Right. So we have researchers with fabulous research who will always want to be the CSO or the CTO, but they don't want to be the CEO. So they're happy to be in the C-suite, but they don't want to be in that founding driving suite. And we're saying, that's okay. You want to focus on the science. We need a brilliant scientist, but we also need somebody to drive the business. And Christian talked about the funding that's available to do that. And the funding really is driven by having a business behind it. So what we're trying to do then is partner with, a key person with practical business experience who can work with that researcher and combine to create a fabulous business that they can both benefit from, and each have their core area of expertise. So we started over the last couple of years to provide programs to educate them in terms of, what the entrepreneurship, what the business supports are, how to go about them, so that they're educated in knowing where they should be and what they should be doing, but they don't necessarily have to be that person. And then we work with finding a team of people who can come with it. Then we try and find a team of funders who can help support it. And everybody, joining together can create startup spin out Inc. that works better than everybody doing it individually. It sounds easy when you say that you can do that. It's not, as simple as it sounds. But what I can say is that there's fabulous resource and fabulous support out there for anybody that's interested in doing it in all of our universities, in all of our innovation centres, and from the network of startups and spin-outs that we've already got in all our regions.
Great, Gert. Thanks. I think it's important that we all acknowledge the supports are available there and they're to be used. So let's signpost people if they're coming through to the relevant parties and make it happen. So in order to keep us on track for time, we have one more question. It's going to be quite rapid fire for the last question. So I might get Dahi to lead it up. So Christian has outlined the commercial supports which are available, which is one part of the overall package. So can you tell me about the soft skill supports available within your organization that you find work well to assist the early stage startups? And you have 60 seconds starting now, Dahi. Over to you.
I suppose before we can give out major funding, we want to be absolutely sure that there is a business case behind it. So one of the key source supports we'd have is our market research centre, where if people are working with us on a project, they can go in, they can delve into hundreds of reports that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, and build that business case that allows them to apply for the meat of the funding that they'll need to develop their idea. We have mentor programs where we can guide people along the way. We have business partner programs where we can tie in the skills we need if they're bringing the technical but not necessarily the business acumen. And we have the whole network of just commercialization specialists who will work with them to put them in contact with the right people, be it investors, be it whoever they need along their journey to fill the gaps that they have in their team.
Okay, that's great. It's great to see all those soft supports coming to the fore, and they've been hardened off over time. So I mean, they've been refined and refined and refined. So they're very ready for market and ready for this. So Neil, jumping to you for a last comment from Trinity in Dublin on the soft supports. What's your view?
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember is that there's a whole community there, and I think in the past the universities have been quite, isolated, and they've been focusing on the wrong things. They've been focusing on inventions and patents and licenses and that type of thing, whereas in the last 10 years, I think there's been very much a shift in terms of universities thinking a bit about, okay, what is the actual money and what is the impact and how do you actually allow a technology to get progress so it can be translated,
Yes.
We've invested a lot of time and effort into engaging with the wider community, engaging with the BICs, engaging with the investors, engaging with the other, making sure that we use the brand of the university to actually get access to smart people that can come in and join our network and engage with us. And that's how you create spin-outs. As Gert said, it's not easy. You just have to get that community and you have to get that thing going, we're actually, the other thing as well as a university, we've actually invested as an LP into a VC fund, which is focused on third level spin-out investments. And I think it's up to universities to get a bit clever and smarter about how they actually do this, and by talking and engaging and having this type of engagement, we can achieve that,
That's great. That's great to see that the engagement is there, and across all the questions, you get a sense of the collaboration and the cooperation across all the universities. So So many thanks for all on the panel for your valued insights. And I might ask Christian to come back in for the final 2 or 3 minutes just to give your closing thoughts and any valued messages to the audience. So thanks, Christian.
Thanks, Declan. I'll try. I'll try my best. Without stealing the thunder from the panelists, who I think gave some really good perspectives on kind of what's happening in the system here. I suppose, look, the first point I guess I'd make, just at a very high level, I think what we've tried to create within Ireland, within the ecosystem, is a connected, transparent, accessible ecosystem. You know, I think both Gert and Neil, I think, talked about aspects of that are happening, particularly in relation to the kind of university system, but broader than that, and I know Anne-Marie touched on some of this on in her slides, it's just kind of overall creating really positive conditions for really class startups to emerge. So I know we had some discussion about spin-ins and spin-outs, and I suppose what I'd say on that is, look, you know, if we park the labels for a minute, if we can get good people together, really high class technology and research together, and to Neil's point, kind of the third leg of the stool in terms of an early stage finance, which we have within the Irish system. Certainly, if you go internationally, I suppose the kind of there's a value death gap, you know, where you've got some really high class research or ideas coming out of university and it can't make the jump into kind of pre-commercial stage. We have that funding in place in our ecosystem here, so it's really about kind of merging all those elements together. It's been built over 20 years, certainly, and we're far from perfect, and we want to push on. I think the next dimension, really, in the discussion around kind of spin-outs from research is that the quality piece really comes through. So I think we want to be moving away from, you know, kind of a numbers game. You know, we've had 25, 30 spin-outs a year. That's fantastic, but what we really want to see is the vast majority of those being really high quality, high growth, high potential startups. And I think that's really where the collaborative piece really has to come into play. And that's, you know, all aspects, be it the international entrepreneurs, be it getting all kind of the stakeholders aligned, the funding, and being very open, I suppose, in terms of the kind of flow of people and ideas through the system. I think that's the real key. And actually the kind of the spin out is just kind of an interesting concept around that. So if I maybe just give you one maybe example, I suppose, and I touched on earlier on the Innovators Initiative, which really has been encapsulated by the MedTech program called BioInnovate in Galway. That was really actually spinning in entrepreneurial-minded innovators into the university system, open them into a very rich ecosystem in a particular sector area, and give them a lot of support to kind of find absolute best-in-class kind of ideas and support them to get out into the system. So I think, just as an example of kind of being creative, being open, and working collaboratively, that's kind of where the future lies for us to really get really high quality impacts from the system. And so to Neil's point, you know, the broader impact for society and economy is by getting the highest quality kind of startups coming out of the system. So that's what we're all looking to achieve. And yeah, so I'll just leave it on that, perhaps.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect, Christian. Thanks very much for the summary. Very apt and very concise. So many thanks to all our speakers again today, to Christian Stafford, to Neil Gordon, to Gert O'Rourke, and to Dahi Power. Thank you very much for your time and your expertise. That's great. And likewise to all participants. And as you can see, there are a lot of supports and there's a lot of context and expertise available. And we have a lot of high quality, high growth case studies of the successes to date. We're here to help. And if any participants are considering setting up a company in Ireland, we're here to assist and to signpost you to all the supports available. So please do make contact. So thank you very much. I'll hand you over now to Finola, Larry, whoever's next there. Thank you.
Thanks, Declan. Thank you so much to the panel. That was super, really, really interesting. We won't detain you much longer. Just wanted to bring to your attention the next market discovery workshops are coming up on Finland on the 10th of June, Sweden on the 11th of June, and Benelux 3rd of July, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania on the 4th of July. The registration link will be in the presentation that I will share with you. And then the next cutoff date for applications for the Seeds of Bravery programs is the 25th of June for the grants of up to 25k. And you can visit the Seeds of Bravery website also there. So that is all we wanted to get through today. We thank everybody for their participation, and to all our speakers and panelists. And thank you very much for attending today.